Hello and welcome to episode 66 of the XboxEra podcast. I'm Sikamikanico and I'm joined, as usual, by Special Nick.
What's going on?
Figments.
Hey, everybody.
And his debut, despite being a part of the XboxEra team for quite some time now on the XboxEra podcast, we have OneBadMutha, aka Abe. How you doing, Abe?
I am great, John. Thanks for having me on this week. I'm really excited to represent the XboxEra's Writers Guild.
Yeah.
Bring our perspective to the show.
Yeah, no, good.
Something so prestigious.
God, look, now we're getting fumbling already. We're like four people. We're all like talking at once. We need to deep breaths, gentlemen. All right, four people. We can do this. We can do this well, one at a time. So it is good to have you on. And it's been a relatively quiet week, which is nice for a change because Microsoft has certainly been keeping us busy. I mean, behind the scenes at XboxEra, it's just a mad rush of late delivered codes for games that are like out on Tuesday that everyone's trying to get everything done for. So aside from those, because we won't talk about all of those because a lot of the people are working on the behind the scenes. Have you guys been playing anything new this last week or last couple of weeks? And we'll start with Abe as he's the newbie on the podcast today.
Yeah. So as the newbie, it was nice to get back into some gaming. I had a week to 2 weeks that were super busy doing other things. So it was nice to kind of get that re-going since that's what we like to talk about. But, a few weeks ago, I did finish up the Mass Effect collection for the very first time.
Wow.
The very first time I played 2 and 3.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
What, so you played 1 in 2007 and then was like, eh.
It's not exactly how it went. 2007, I actually was a huge BioWare fan. I played Baldur's Gate on the PC. When Knights of the Old Republic was announced, that was one of my most anticipated games of all time. Loved that game. One of my favorite games of that generation. And then even Mass Effect 1 was one of my favorite games for that period of time. Yeah, I beat it. I was day one. I flew through that first week it was there, and I loved it. I took a break from gaming for 3 to 4 years to kind of get things back in order. Personally, that's another show. But that's when things like Mass Effect 2 and 3 came out, when Gears 2 and 3 were out, like a lot of really big games. So it's been really nice. It's one of the great things about the platform has kind of been going back to some of the things I missed. But Mass Effect, I held off on that one because I had a suspicion they would eventually do some sort of remaster. It just made sense. It's EA, right? So I did that. Right. But it's one of my top 5 franchises of all time. I was really bummed out. Like when it was over and the credits were going, I was like, oh my God. Like, it was like a hole right away. As soon as I uninstalled it, there was like a hole in my lineup. And so I went in, out of desperation, I downloaded Andromeda. I'm saying this right.
Andromeda?
I always mispronounce it. Oh man, Andromeda. Yeah, people make fun of me for butchering pronouncing.
Have you seen Have you seen the F1 review? Apparently, I had someone I know WhatsApp me after watching the F1 review with voice messages criticizing the pronunciation of names in that review. I was like, I'm really sorry.
Of race car drivers?
Yeah, to be fair to me, we thought the embargo for that was the day later, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, I've got plenty of time. And then I was watching something on YouTube, and then the next video that flung up in my recommended was F1 2021 review from IGN, and I was like, and I quickly pinged Fairy Empire. I was like, can you check that embargo again, please, mate? And he was like, it was 2 hours ago. I was like flying, like narrating and doing all of it in like an hour and a half. So apologies, KP, for mispronouncing some names. All right, get over yourself. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you, OBM. My bad.
No, that's totally fine. But in my defense, I feel like I always, when I don't hear somebody say something over and over, I pronounce it in my head the way I would remember to spell it correctly. So that's why that's why things get. I do that with a lot of things, and if people don't say that word a lot in my head, after a while, it's like, are you sure that's how you say that?
Yeah.
So yeah. So Andromeda. Thank you for clearing that up.
That's all right.
That was fine. I was playing it. I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. It's fine. And then I went back to the forums and I'm like, guys, is this worth playing? And they're like, oh, yeah, give it a shot. And I just kept saying it was fine. I'm like, you know what? Some things are better off just left where you remember them.
It doesn't have the heart of ME 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't.
You know what it felt like? It felt like remember when Star Wars first rebooted after the original trilogy? It kind of felt something like that. It just felt like on the surface, it was all right, but it was it lost its soul somewhere in there. So I just stopped with that. But I did go back to Dragon Age because I'd never played that series. So I've been starting on that. That whole thing's on Game Pass, so I figured let's boot that up.
Why not?
Yeah, and then Dark Souls, we got the 60 frames per second update last week, so I went and downloaded the DLC, started that back up, and Blood Roots, that's a brand new game that came to Game Pass. I always have to have that small little, after I get my butt kicked by the same boss 20 times in a row, I need something I can go back to and feel like I have some gaming skills.
The palate cleanser. The palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've been playing a lot more games than I have, so I'm jelly. I did finish ME2 yesterday and started ME3 straight away, and I'm already like, I just love those games. But I'm not going to wax lyrical because that's all I've played. So what about you, Nick? What have you been playing?
Obviously I've been playing Streets of Rage 4 again because the Mr. X Nightmare DLC came out, which I got to review. And it's great. It's probably the best survival mode I've played in a game.
Wow, that's heaps of praise right there.
And yeah, they just did it super, super well, and the new characters are great, and yeah, it's awesome. So I'm making my way through now to get the achievements in that, and I started The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, which is amazing. It's the first time we've got Zelda in 60 frames, which is so good.
Nice.
I love it. I've got to wait for my amiibo because I had put my name down for that Loftwing amiibo, and it came out Friday with the game, but we went into lockdown Thursday night, so I couldn't go in to get the amiibo. So I've got to wait till the lockdown ends before I can get my microtransaction amiibo.
Never mind. You'll live. Surely. Does it just gives you some extra stuff in the game, right?
It lets you fast travel between the sky and the worlds beneath just instantly. That's it.
Oh, that seems rather convenient, but okay.
They basically locked a quality of life feature behind an amiibo.
Oh, Nintendo.
Which is very Nintendo. But sort of like charging $100 more just for an OLED screen.
Oh,
but yeah,
that's not.
They're charging. That price is in Australia, right? Because in the States it's only a $50 increase.
Yeah, in Australia it's 90.
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so I won't be buying that.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it.
Just leave us Australia, Nick. That's a simple solution.
Yeah,
I'm sure John would love to have like one of you guys next to him, so he can just pal around,
Oh. We could talk about friends. We could have friends nights. All sorts of shenanigans. What about you, Figments? You been playing anything new this week?
Monster Hunter Stories 2.
Yeah.
That came out 2 days ago? No, a week ago, I think.
You've lost time to it. That's how much you've been playing it. You don't even know what day it is anymore.
No,
right?
There's been a lot happening over the past few weeks. So, but Monster Hunter, I just managed to get to the game because I picked it up on launch day from Best Buy, came home, and then I sat on it for a few days. And I just, like a couple days ago, started playing it. Really good game. Shame the first one never really got anywhere, and I'm hoping they can change that around with the second one because it's very well made. Like, not a lot of issues. Beautiful aesthetic for the Switch.
I find that with the Switch a lot. They often have a
Yeah.
beautiful aesthetic. It's just, it's at 720p or lower,
But 720p on a small device
Yeah, it
in your
works.
hand,
and
it works.
And
So,
well, as I said, no one steal my segues. Speaking of small handheld 720p devices, Valve had a bit of a moment this week with the announcement of the Steam Deck. Now,
can we all agree that is like, it's an amazing concept and it looks cool, and I have mine already, like I'm already in line for the 512 gigabyte version. Put my $5 down day of, but that is not going to sell like at all beyond the initial batch of people who get it. I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
oh, let's
It'll
have a conversation.
probably do better than the Steam consoles did.
Maybe. I think that's a lot of that. It can be down to like what, now that Steam OS and Proton can run, like, I think the confirmed limit was like over 12,000 Steam games can now run perfectly on Linux, which is not nothing, but it's not. I think upper limit's like 30,000 or something.
I don't envision it will be hugely successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everyone's like, oh, it's got the power of like, sort of between Xbox One and PS4, but apparently the GPU bandwidth is horrendous.
It's got to run on a battery, so yeah.
Yeah.
Like
allegedly the bandwidth on it is like nothing. So it's going to be interesting to see what it can actually run.
That's weird considering the bandwidth for the RAM is insane. It's like 5.5 like MTs per second, I think. I don't know what MTs is.
I don't know. I was reading some of them talking
Maltesers.
about it on the Discord, and I just kind of tuned out because I'm not interested in it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of further and like excitement on Twitter and in the gaming sphere for it, and I get why Valve have done it, right? Because yes, the Switch is a super popular indie platform for indie games, right? And I guess Valve are like, yeah, let's see if we can have some of that. But I would imagine your hardcore PC gamers have zero interest in something like that, right? I don't know. It feels very niche. When I saw it, I was like, okay, I have a PC, and then I was like, I don't care. Like,
I think it's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, don't you think though that there's a big enough, like when you think of the niche that it would feel like with Steam gamers, I think a lot of people assume that every Steam gamer has this like super high powered rig PC, but a lot of people, I have some friends that do PC game and they just love a lot of these indies, a lot of these smaller games that probably wouldn't even run on the Switch, honestly. And I think that's where the value is going to come in. It'll be interesting to see how big that is, but to me, that's the exciting part about that. It's like taking not your AAA stuff necessarily. Yeah. It's taking that portion of your library with you. Because even when I think about like xCloud being a complement or any of this stuff, this mobile stuff, not everything that you play on your big screen really is meant to be viewed on a tiny screen regardless. So I think it's going to be something where you take part of your library with you. Some of these smaller roguelites or there's a lot of, I remember my buddy was telling me about a game called Papers, Please, and like there's a lot of like little niche, a lot of niche games that would, I think, translate well. And then you got the SSD on the mid end to the higher end model, and the Zen 2. So obviously you'll get good frame rates, and I think that's where that's going to fall in. But I think it's a good question to say like how big could that actually get. It might be more interesting to see how that actually might be a sign of things to come more than what this is today.
Yeah.
And to like expand on that too a little bit, it's just, I feel like going at it from the perspective of, Valve looked at the Switch and said, why don't we make all that money? I don't think they made this to be a Switch competitor, like, at all. Because and multiple people like across the spectrum have already said it, like, you can't compete with Nintendo because Nintendo has Nintendo games. Mm-hmm. Like, that thing will sell out regardless because you're buying it for the Nintendo games.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Like,
having said that, I
I don't think Valve is like necessarily going after the Steam market of, oh, people want to play PC games on the go. I think it's like they failed with the Steam consoles. So they're thinking to themselves, how can we differentiate this where it's people aren't just looking at a box under their TV and saying, oh, that's just a PC, I can build one of those myself, versus what can we do to differentiate ourselves and make Steam a platform?
Mhm.
So we don't have to be married to this whole like PC thing, you know?
Yeah.
Especially in light of recent like over the last several years where Gabe Newell and others at Valve have publicly stated they want to get away from Windows. Period.
Yeah, they
They
do.
don't want to be tied to.
But and on that subject, right? I've also seen a lot of excitement out there following the announcement that, you know, Valve themselves said, yeah, if you wanted to, you could wipe the Steam OS off and install a fresh copy of Windows. And then there's been excitement from the Xbox camp because, hey, look, here's my Game Pass PC mobile machine, right? I can go play Sea of Thieves with local hardware anywhere. And I get the excitement of that, and then I've even seen threads on our forums, you know, people talking about, you know, should Microsoft make a portable at some point? And I think that there was one thread I saw today from our good friend Anorexic who was talking about a low end, nothing in it aside from the ability to, you know, pull data and a lovely OLED screen with the controllers attached and all of that. You know, sell it for $149 US or something like that. And that is like the Xbox Portable, but it's purely streaming. It does not do anything else. But again, you know, I look at how Microsoft are approaching mobile gaming, and their mantra is it's additive. It's not a replacement. They're not carving up their development studios like Sony had to do with Vita, or, you know, Nintendo had to do with DS and the Wii U, or, you know, and stuff like that, where, we want to release everything on both. You know, Nintendo have carved themselves out that hybrid model, and that's it there, and it will probably be it forever, right? I don't think they're ever going to have a handheld and a home console ever again.
I don't think so.
You know, Microsoft, this is, okay, we're not going to, they're not going to, they've only just kind of, and then, even then we've not even had all the games come out. They've only just got their house in order. They're not going to go and build something where they develop games for one thing and games for another. It's just, you know, it's part of the ecosystem. It's never going to be its own thing, my opinion. I don't think I'm ever going to see an Xbox boy or something like that.
I think people will be playing Nintendo games on this thing anyway, because they're already talking about running Dolphin on it. They're already talking about running the Switch emulator on it.
And you don't even need to install Windows for those. And frankly, you shouldn't, because according to every resource I've seen, like the AMD graphics drivers on Windows are awful compared to the Linux drivers. Like, the Linux drivers are leaps and bounds ahead of the Windows drivers for AMD graphics. So, like, I think something the developers for the Yuzu Switch emulator came out and said something like, if you want to put Windows on this thing and play emulated Switch games on Windows, you are going to have an objectively inferior product than just installing Yuzu on SteamOS and running it that way.
But either way,
plus no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, to one of your earlier points, though, I think, you know, a lot of people are looking at this in like a vacuum. Like, this is the success or failure is going to be based off of how many more, you know, how many units they can sell of this. Obviously, it seems like, based on what Gabe said, they're selling it at a loss or not really any profit. And I think to what Figments' point was earlier was, you know, I think it does come down to this perception, you know, creating this sort of platform, this mind share about your platform that, hey, if you buy stuff on our store and you want to have that option, maybe you don't need it today, but that option to take it with you will eventually be there when you need it. Like, I even look at that as something when you think about the Xbox, and I'm not a PC gamer today, but I look at, like, well, you know what, if I upgrade and get a high-end PC, you know, next year, and I want to play, Halo on my widescreen, I have that option is going to be there. And I think it's really like the industry with the way it's going. The lead platforms are going to be the ones that can say to the customer that we're going to meet you wherever you want to be. If we need to meet you on the go, we'll figure out a way to do that. If you want to play the highest end experience on a PC, we're going to meet you there. And I think it's trying to create more avenues, and it's not really about that in the vacuum. It's about what it represents as a whole. And so it's same with Microsoft, what they're doing with expanding everything. It's really, they don't care which way you come in, which off ramp you take onto their freeway. They just want you on that freeway, and I think that's all this is.
The real question is,
and oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
You sure? I was going to say the real question is the Steam Deck going to hold this generation back? No takers.
But
nobody.
I think the other thing that's cool about it is that Valve was never gonna put Windows on this thing by default. Never, ever was it gonna put Windows on that by default. And the fact that they went with Linux at a time right now where Proton, for listeners and anyone out here who don't know what Proton is, it's basically just a library that allows games to get translated on the fly from Windows to Linux and have them run as good as they can be through that layer. It's not quite emulation, but it's like how Windows subsystem for Linux works. It's a translation layer to the Windows stuff, whereas this is in reverse, from Windows to Linux. Anyway, Proton has gotten so good over the years, that the only real major issue that's holding it back, that's holding gaming, just being able to say, I'm going to put Linux on my new PC and I don't have to care about Windows anymore, is legitimately just the games that have anti-cheat or really aggressive DRM.
Yeah, you can't have anti-cheat working on Steam Deck at the moment. It's something they're working on, right? So any games that utilize that.
And because of that, though, if this thing takes off in any way, because even if it sells 1 million units, that's still something of a statement, right? It won't push. I'm not going to say it'll push developers to say we're going to make Linux a number one up there with Windows. No, it's not going to happen. But more developers coming out and saying, yeah, we're optimizing to make sure this runs as well as it can using Proton on Linux. I can see that becoming more and more of a thing as we get as the Steam Deck gets in people's hands, good word of mouth spreads potentially. And it's just people look at this and say, yeah, we don't have to port our game to Linux. We could just make sure it runs really well on Proton. And then people don't have to care.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch it all play out. When does the Steam Deck come out? My brain's let me down.
Shipments start late this year and depends on when you line up, because so how it works is you're basically just putting yourself on a list you're reserving a spot on a list. And first come, first serve. They start off shipping to the first several thousand people on the list by the end of this year. But if you were too late, then your shipment date got pushed to quarter 1 2022, quarter 2 2022.
I've seen shipments as late as quarter 3 2022.
I don't
even know if Valve's going to be able to make 1 million of them, let alone sell 1 million of them. This is the other thing everyone's forgetting.
Yeah.
Valve is way down the pecking order in terms of chip priority to make these things. That's something that everyone is forgetting in all of this. The fervor for, oh my God, this thing's going to kick ass. They're not going to be able to make enough of them for this thing to be able to kick ass, let alone sell them as well. There's a pecking order when it comes to this stuff. It's not just they're not just making everything for everyone at the same time. There is a pecking order, and Valve is way down.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
Yeah.
They're not a
another
hardware
thing to keep in
manufacturer,
mind.
at least not traditionally.
It's definitely going to be interesting watching it all play out. But so so I'm presuming Figments, due to your somewhat passionate feelings towards it, I presume you've ordered one.
I think I said at the beginning. I've already put $5 down on the list for. I put my $5 down later in the day, so I got quarter 2 2022. But I'm going to be getting the 512 gigabyte version because I'll probably be dual booting Windows on it just to like.
Just so you can look at
See
your
how
backlog
good
on Steam anywhere you want, not just on your home PC. You just stare at your backlog and go.
I might
cool.
even not, honestly, when it gets to the point, I might not even install Windows on it at all because, like, wasn't there a rumor that Microsoft was working with Valve on trying to get Game Pass on Steam at some point?
It was rumors.
Yep.
Yeah. So if those rumors pan out and that happens, then you don't even need Windows because Microsoft says they're likely going to be putting games on Steam regardless.
Yeah. But...
So.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be
Not
an
even
interesting.
coming to Australia. I don't even think it's coming to Australia at the moment.
Valve can't reach that far. But yeah, so Steam Deck.
They can't even count to 3, so.
I remember there was a quote from Gabe about making games on consoles, and I think he said, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, "Oh, you'll hear some news later on this year." I'm presuming this is what he was talking about, right? He isn't talking about PS5. Yeah. He isn't talking about Xbox Series S or X. He's talking about his baby.
Probably that.
So yeah, interesting stuff.
They made a Switch Pro.
We'll see how it does.
They made the Switch Pro. That's where all the rumors came from. That's the real truth.
Where the rumors came from. That was the Valve Switch Pro.
Oh god. Okay, so another piece of news that didn't necessarily drop this week, as in there wasn't a big announcement, but I think it's something worth highlighting. It kind of did the rounds on Twitter, so if you haven't heard about this, 343 obviously do their regular blogs, and they recently did one where they interviewed one of the multiplayer designers, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember his name, but he was giving his interview, and in the interview he talked about a specific element, a new feature for accessibility and team cooperation that's coming to Halo Infinite, which is the mark system. So when I say that, immediately my brain goes to Apex Legends, where they produce that ping system, and it sounds like Halo Infinite is going to get something remarkably similar. So one would presume you could ping weapons and vehicles and all sorts of things, other enemies, etc., etc. Which
is great.
I'm all for this, right? There's been a bit of discussion about, will it make... I saw one video from, I think it was Late Night Gaming, who said he thought it would make social play too sweaty. I don't agree with him.
There is
No, I don't.
Let's clarify this for a second. Pinging in video games has been a thing since Battlefield. So Apex Legends did not start this.
No, but Apex Legends, there's a big difference between spotting and you get a tiny little triangle over an enemy for a minute rather in line of sight.
Apex Legends did it. It's not that Apex Legends did it first. Yeah, Apex Legends was the first to do a proper one.
It was really well made.
Literally anything, call for help, this, that, the other. They were the first to do it, that full-fledged thing. But yes, it had been done previously. I think even Halo 5 kind of had something basic too.
In the campaign.
Yeah.
In the campaign.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things some people forget about too. Like that sort of concept already existed in Halo 5. They never brought it over to multiplayer. I do think there's some balancing challenges with when you do bring it over there. And so it'd be interesting to see how they actually implement it, because to me, you can't really be for or against it without really knowing the details.
True.
One of the complaints that people have with the Battlefield system is that, when you ping it, it actually kind of helps the team assist in tracking the guy, right? Like it stays over your head, it helps you aim for him.
Not true anymore, actually.
That's what it was. So,
that used to be, but no, I'm just trying to clarify. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I haven't played it recently, but yeah, the devil's gonna be in the details and how it works. I will say though, even as somebody who plays mostly 4v4 matches in Halo, I put in. I say all the time on our Halo podcast, I put in over 2,000 hours just in Halo 5 4v4 alone. So, I have a lot of time in that. And a lot of times, Halo is better with teams. It's better with people and getting on the mic. But, a lot of times you just want to play it when nobody else is around. And I think this could make it a better experience if they implement it correctly, right? Because it kind of makes up for the lack of mic.
Yeah, there's two things that's on my mind with this. Is just the whole comment of, will this make this game super sweaty? It's it won't make it any more sweaty than Rocket League's quick message system made Rocket League sweaty. I don't really like it's funny to see people like spam calculated in the chat when they made like a really dumb play that somehow still worked out for them, you know.
Mine are always planned. They're never done plays. I plan
like
all
God's
of mine.
sake.
Okay, Nick. But anyway, like I don't think it's going to make the game inherently more sweaty. I think there's going to be a lot of spamming it, and I feel like at some point maybe you should be allowed to turn it and turn it off. Maybe.
Am I misunderstanding what sweaty means? Why would a ping system make a game sweaty?
The argument that was made
because it means you can start spamming it and try and get.
Hold on. What do you guys think sweaty means?
So the argument is that when I want to play a sweaty game of Halo, I'm going into ranked. I am constant team chat. Yeah, it's one at bottom BR. Blah,
it's
blah,
intense.
It's intense.
Sweaty is intense.
And the ping system could replace that constant team communication of where players are, when weapons are going to spawn, da 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 da. And the argument being made was if that's just available all the time with a simple press of a button, that it would make social play, i.e. I'm just going to pool around and have fun and not worry about my KD or not worry about my rank. It would make social play more inherently competitive because you're being spammed with all of this battlefield awareness. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand why that point of view exists. I just when I go into social, when I play with my crew and we're in social because we don't want to get stomped, but we're still looking to stomp, right? So we're still playing sweaty. Yeah. Like there might be a bit more banter and a bit more shenanigans and less, bottom BR, and one shot on my X, all that kind of nonsense. But it's still, we're still in it to win it.
And people also have to realize like nobody talks in game chat anymore unless you're playing at the highest levels of competitive play, where if you're not in game chat, you are literally a detriment to your team.
Yeah.
But for 90% of players, everyone's in party chat or they're not talking at all.
Yeah.
Having a ping system is better than not having a ping system, especially for competitive modes, because people need to be in constant communication if you want to win the game.
Yeah.
Not having that avenue is just like it's playing with your arm chopped off, you know?
Well, and that's the thing. And John, you said it. Even when you're playing social, it's not like you don't care at all about winning, right? I mean, that's why you keep score. And so if you didn't care at all, then you just turn off the score. I'm assuming just like with radar and things like that, there's going to be modes that it will be turned off, right? Like we know that Halo has generally been very customizable. They can turn things on and off. I expect that there will be certain modes where you will not have. Maybe even snipers, you don't have a ping system or something like that. But the fact is, most of the time when you're on there and you're on there with casuals, I actually think it brings the sweatiness down a little bit from one aspect, and that is if you are wanting to win, you really have to learn the maps and what all the areas are called and things like this. Yeah. If you just want to go on and like kind of chat with your buddies, like that's how we usually like to play. Like we do call out things, but we're not all the time, just unless we're on some kind of roll that we're trying to keep. It's not like constantly, sometimes we'll banter about something on TV, not friends, but we'll talk about things on, we'll talk about, something we watched on TV, and then it just gives you that ability to kind of make it more casual, but still play cooperatively, I think. So I think it actually will bring that down at some level, right?
Yeah. Either way, I have a feeling, and I'm speaking from guesswork here, but I feel like 343 are hinting heavily that it's coming. That whatever they've been spamming. Even the Xbox main account on Twitter was like, coming? Sign up to the Insider Program if you want to play Halo Infinite. You need to be on this. Yeah. I think Unishek did a big thread on it. The Halo account retweeted it. The Xbox main account retweeted it. I sense that maybe they're like, hurry up, sign up.
I went to sign up, and then I got to this step where it's like, you got to be part of the Xbox Insider Program too, and I'm like, close tab. I am not joining the Xbox Insider Program.
You can be part of the Xbox Insider Program without downloading the Insider updates. You can just be part of the program.
Yeah, you can just
go
be an
into
insider.
an update channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Quickly,
I have to ask something though, and maybe it's just because I don't play Halo multiplayer as much as I used to. Ping systems have generally been in battle royales and bigger multiplayer game, like Battlefield's your big open da-da-da-da-da. Would a ping system even work that well in a tiny arena competitive shooter?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Here's a good example. Black Ops Cold War has a ping system throughout the entire game, and without that ping system, Search and Destroy would be a nightmare playing with randoms, because I need to be able to tell them where they are. I am not putting on my mic to listen to toxic shit in the chat. I am going to tell them where they are with a ping. I'm not putting on a mic for that game.
I don't know. I'm trying to picture it in Halo 5, and I don't know. It's weird, especially when you've got it. Like in Halo 5, your Spartans are already telling you enemy at blue base, enemy at here, this here. The power weapons are about to spawn. I'm like, I don't see how a ping system would even work in Halo 5.
I think Halo Infinite's ping system is going to be an evolution of Spartan Chatter, right? Because Spartan Chatter was a way of including everybody. Even if you weren't sitting there with a headset in talking, it was letting everybody know what was going on and where. And the ping system now just gives a little bit of player agency, because normally you'd get, there's one in blue base if you land a shot. But now you might not want to give away your position, but you might want to just tag that you saw someone there, and it will alert everybody else, and you can control that rather than the system deciding how to communicate it. So I think it's a good thing, but we're not going to know until we've got it in our hands and we've actually done that first insider flight. Yeah. And judging from all of the hints, it's got to be coming soon.
Does this hint at a Halo Infinite battle royale though?
That's what I was thinking.
I still don't think so. No, I just don't.
I
think if there's going to be a Halo,
think it's happening.
I think if there's going to be a Halo battle royale, it's not going to be at launch. It is definitely
no way at launch. But I think down the road there will 100% be a battle royale.
There's a 10-year plan.
Because I think about how I use the ping system, and again, I only use it in battle royales, in Apex, in Fortnite, and it's just funny to see Respawn like. They made Titanfall, which then has since influenced FPSs in a massive way with traversal systems and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, and just general speed. FPS are so much faster than they used to be.
And then Apex, they introduced their ping system, which is even Fortnite went and copied it, and like now everyone has a ping system. It's like it's just funny how Respawn
pioneers
/ OG Infinity Ward.
Yeah, they're good bunch of devs, right? They make good games. I can't deny that, right?
It's a shame that Microsoft never chomped at them when
they
were still for sale.
Yeah,
not enough to help
EA had first rights.
Yeah,
that was a different.
They used them. No. EA had first rights and they used them. Wasn't that Microsoft didn't want them?
Wow, what could have been? But anyway, that's not the only piece of Halo news we've had this week. Microsoft and 343 also announced a new version to celebrate 20 years of everybody's favourite Xbox franchise, a new Halo Encyclopedia. Now, I never owned the previous one, but I am very, very tempted to pick this up. I think it comes out later on this year, and it looks stuffed with really cool concept art and little stories.
Clarification: Is this going to be like covering all the information from all the books, from all the games, like in one source, or is this going to be like, is it a lore book, or is it more like here's the dev history of Halo?
I don't think it's dev history necessarily. It's more, facts, dates. Keep me honest here, mother.
Artwork and things like that. Yeah, I think it's a good question, because when I first saw that, I like. It could potentially be, a real exciting thing for Halo fans, especially if you are not somebody that, you're somebody like Nick who never reads, who hasn't read since he was forced to back in grade school. I honestly haven't read Halo books recently either.
Awesome. Wow, such shade.
Yeah. But if you're somebody that really likes the game, you really like the world building that you see in the games, but you just don't have the time to invest to get caught up on all the lore. And honestly, some of the stuff is not all great is not all well written anyway. So it's like it's kind of unfair to force people to do that. I think that would be a nice tool. I think it's something that there is definitely a void they could fill with that. So I hope that that's what it is. So I don't know if that is, to Figments' question, that is going to be something that provides all the lore, but that is something that they could definitely provide a service for, and hopefully they do. If they don't, then hey, everybody's listening here now has got a business idea to go run out there and provide something that's cool. Like a lore, that really shows you all the stuff. Even in 4 and 5, like we talk about in our Halo podcast all the time, as somebody who hasn't read all those books, they get a better appreciation of those games because there is so much that comes from the books they read. Whereas to me, it's just like, this is going, I still like playing those games, but obviously the story is it's out there. It doesn't really jive because there's so many pieces of that story that I'm missing as somebody who hasn't read all those books. So I think I think that could be an exciting thing.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's out later on this year. I'm probably going to buy it because I love me my Halos.
Good Halo merch.
Yeah.
Nice bookshelf. Nice bookshelf decoration.
Yeah, I'm wearing four versions of the Master Chief today. So
I got my Halo shirt on too.
Very cool Halo shirt. What else has happened this week? So I think Matt Booty. I'm racking my brains for this because it was way earlier in the week. I think he did an interview of sorts with, I want to say The Guardian or something like that.
The Guardian.
Was it The Guardian?
Yep.
And effectively, the interesting point that was caught up on, it's worth mentioning, was he kind of reiterated something that I think every Xbox fan already knows, in that they don't force their developers to make live service games, which is the assumption that a lot of people made, like especially when Ninja Theory, as soon as they were acquired, the first release they had was Bleeding Edge. It was this multiplayer game. Oh, you guys are normally known for first single player games. Why is this a thing? It was what Ninja Theory wanted to make, and
they'd already started making it.
Yeah,
before they were acquired.
But it was nice to see Matt Booty reiterate that and really underline.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
the console wars will
do. The Twitter stands will not recognize that as the valid canon of the console war. The Bible, whatever.
He said we don't have any direction or mandate that says every game has to be an ongoing, sustained game.
Yeah.
But like, we had this talk back with Rare years ago where everyone was like, well, Microsoft's forcing Rare to make Kinect games, and then Rare came out and said, no, we like Kinect and we want to make Kinect games. I mean, Rare has said repeatedly that they are uninterested in going back to their old IP.
Yeah.
They'd just rather do their own thing. That's why we saw Killer Instinct out with someone else. What was that? Perfect Dark is being done by the Initiative. If we're going to see Rare's IPs return, it's going to be with other studios. It's not going to be, I don't think, with Rare.
Other studios that have that nostalgia for that particular IP and want to bring it back to life or inject some new life into it. We're never going to see Rare dip back in and make, unless it's some unique idea. Like the only reason I think Banjo Nuts and Bolts was a thing was because they loved the idea of the vehicle making system. Regardless of your opinion on Nuts and Bolts, it was a very pretty game, I'll give it that.
Very.
It just didn't tick the box of, people just wanted more of the same Banjo. They wanted a new world and go collect all the things and do the stuff. And it's just not them as a developer. And obviously, I think Sea of Thieves in particular for Rare has just been such a bonanza of a success story from launch, from there's not enough content through to really like uplifting it. It's going to be, I think it's almost becoming a Roblox on its own, Sea of Thieves, across PC and console. I mean, it's huge.
If it wants to really be Roblox, then it's got to have a mobile version.
With the Steam Deck, it's now available. There you go. You got Sea of Thieves.
that's actually something we could have even mentioned it when we were talking about the Steam Deck. I mentioned that was something that was more of a signal of what's to come. If you kind of look at where technology is going, and especially with engines being scalable and things like that, eventually at some point Sea of Thieves is going to be available on your phone. We just don't know what phone version that's going to be, but especially with the way games are growing. So I want to mention that real quick. But one of the things when Booty said that, and obviously we've heard that multiple times. I think most people in the Xbox community have heard it, but it is worth reminding people, especially as like in light of things that, I guess the best way to say it is like, a lot of times your strengths and your opportunities are going to mirror each other, right? So when you give people the freedom and you focus on diversity, there's going to be a downside to that. Just like there's an upside to focusing on one type of thing, like where a lot of times, I've heard even on, you guys talk about in the past where, Sony's very, very good at quality assurance on their types of games. But when you focus on becoming an expert in one type of game over 2 decades, you're going to have a support studio that can support all your studios that are making those types of games. When you have what they're doing now, which is a platform which, in order to create the type of engagement they want, they need to be able to basically appeal to a large demographic of people of all different ages, different countries, different tastes. And not all those people are going to want to play a gas game. You're not even going to get them into your ecosystem if that's all you're offering. So that should take away that one fear for, the fear mongering you see sometimes on Twitter about that.
Yep.
But the thing I'll mention about that is the downside to that is that you are not going to have the same level of quality control. You never will, because like when Rare decides they're going to make Everwild, they're going to try to do something that they've never done before, and maybe it's not coming together, and that creative director steps back, and now they got to reboot that. And then I saw I'm sure you guys all saw it on YouTube. Even some big names came out and said, "What the hell is going on at Microsoft?" Like where they can't get these AAA games on schedule. It's like that is going to be the downside of that. But for Microsoft, what they're doing right now, and I think what Spencer talked about even on Kind of Funny, like, they're focusing on bringing in these leaders that have track records, that that have credibility, that they can just say, "Yeah, I trust you." Brian Fargo, I've seen how you can run a studio. Fergus, we've seen how you run a studio. Do it, Nina over at Ninja Theory, we've seen it. You guys have proven yourself. Go ahead and we'll just give you the resources. We trust you guys. And so within that, you are going to get some misses or some reboots maybe, or some things that don't hit like a bleeding edge. And I think that we have to accept that if we're going to, if we want them to take risks and we want the diversity, I think we have to be willing to understand that in the big picture, it's there is going to be some misses in that as well.
Yeah,
and that's where
I think that's a solid point, right? It is you can't expect the same quality level. I do think that they will try and gear up, and they have geared up, tech teams to help bridge that gap. But if you're going to try new things and it's not in the same wheelhouse that everyone is going to be doing, using the same engines and so on and so forth, doing different things, different objectives, you're going to get hits and misses. You're going to get rougher moments. I'm very curious, and I'm sure everybody will be, right? Halo Infinite has had a rough showing last year, but I feel they've really turned that around. The community seems very, very positive and excited. Mm-hmm. Very, very interested to see what that final product looks like. What ships with it? Mm. Will it have Forge? Mm-hmm. Will it have theatre? Will it have all the boxes that most Halo fans would expect to be ticked? Or, are there going to be compromises made to even reach this date?
Not.
I hope not.
Surely not.
But we'll see, right? And I'm very curious to see how it all unfolds, and it's an interesting time in the industry. But you mentioned... Go on.
I was going to say, ultimately, in the end, we've said this before, I'd like to believe that they are smart enough to understand that a subscription service only survives and thrives on variety. Like, if Netflix only did 2 or 3 types of shows, it would not be the behemoth that it is right now.
Yeah.
Disney Plus the same. Like, you can't just have games as a service, microtransaction filled multiplayer games on Game Pass, because then eventually people will stop subscribing to it. So I don't understand. To me, it's weird logic when I hear people say, well, everything's going to be multiplayer games as a service now. It's like, but no one's going to subscribe, because the most successful games as a service multiplayer games are the free-to-play ones anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it makes no sense. Like, I don't understand. And I mean, there's another quote here in the article from, I think is it Phil or Booty? I think it's Booty. Sea of Thieves has longevity, and we're going to have Halo multiplayer start to be based around seasons. But Compulsion Games, our studio in Montreal, weren't told to go build something that's going to have seasons or 6 pieces of DLC or something. Tell me, why was it an important story for us to get out there? But there is no mandate that they've got to go figure out how to do seasons for that game. They're letting the studios do whatever they want. We know that In Exile's doing a couple of things that are single player and blah, 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 blah. If something has a multiplayer element to it, I don't think that's the end of the world. I mean,
No.
everyone creams their jocks over these Dark Souls games, and don't they all have multiplayer elements to them? Shared world multiplayer crap where people can jump into your game and blah, 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 blah.
That's
Yeah, both.
We'd need to see a percentage on that one, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who'd argue most people turn that off.
well. Here's
it's
an
there.
interesting segue, and
Yeah, I mean, it's there, yeah.
I feel like this is a good debate to have. Let's talk about it, because I got into, foolishly, an argument with stupid Twitter people, right? And I realised I shouldn't have, right? And I knew it even as I was typing, because it was almost like I know you are, but what am I from these guys? And I'm like, ugh. And then someone else like got involved and was talking about it. And the premise is this: the big argument happened this week with regards to Psychonauts 2 announcing it would have an invincibility mode in their game.
Yeah.
It might have been last week, forgive me, recently. And there was this big pushback from tryhards, in my opinion, suck it up, that,
Andes. Just call them Andes.
and you saw these lame jokes on Twitter like, oh, you mean game journalism mode? And, you know, and what was another one? Like, oh, you can't have easy modes. And then obviously the debate became around Dark Souls. Like, Dark Souls can't possibly have anything other than the horrible bastard hard modes that it is, because that's the whole point of the game, man.
But Dark Souls isn't hard.
Okay, I have no interest in the Souls games. I know there's some Souls fans in here. But here's the thing.
I don't play them.
I wouldn't play them because I value my time, and I don't care about the self-aggravating achievement of being like, yay, I beat that. I've had those moments in games. I understand the passion for them. Yeah, like, yes, like Ninja Gaiden when I was a kid.
God modes are the best.
Right?
Unfortunately,
God modes are
John,
the
Nick, I just simply think you guys need to get better at games. That's all I need to say.
That's effectively the argument. Like, oh, just get good.
Yeah.
I actually ended up chatting to, and this is a total segue, but I ended up chatting to Stephen, and I want to get his surname right, but I'm probably going to screw it up.
Is it
Stephen
Spawn?
Spawn, yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
I
I've
presume
never heard it pronounced before.
That's how
just
I was going to
based on the
pronounce
spelling.
it. But he's a very prominent face in accessibility, and I saw him do a big thread on it as well. And it's like, from a game developer point of view, right? They want as many people as humanly possible to want to buy their game. If their game is bastard hard and they only sell 500 copies, but those 500 copies get people going, oh, it was really hard, but it was so worth it. Good for them, but you've not made any money back on your big game that you've just tried to make, right? Whereas if they make with a variety of modes and it has difficulty settings and it has accessibility, it broadens the audience to which that game can sell. And seeing these arguments made, I actually ended up reaching out to Stephen, because one of the things I thought about was, hey, you know, as XboxEra, should we consider, you know, at some point going forward, trying to include notes on accessibility? So he put me in touch with some other folks and gave me some resources that we can go investigate that. If you're listening to this podcast and you would like to see that kind of stuff in our reviews, I think we're going to look to see how we can do it, how we can facilitate it. Let us know, because we think it's valuable. But what do you guys think? Should let's cut it down into a boilerplate argument, should Dark Souls, as an example, have a variety of difficulty settings and easy modes? Brace yourselves, because there'll be vitriol forced to you.
Yeah, but
online.
why not? I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to play the normal or hard mode, it's there.
Correct.
Like, I don't understand. Like,
let me just say something, and because I think the look on your face tells me we might have the same general idea. I think Dark Souls should have difficulty options, but those difficulty options should not come at the expense of the designer's specified intent.
Agreed.
Yeah,
okay.
that's a fair statement.
Okay.
Okay.
If Miyazaki, what is it? Not Miyazaki. What's
Miyazaki? Yeah,
it's Miyazaki, right? Yeah. If Miyazaki wants to go out and say, I'm gonna make a game that's difficult but fair, it's punishing, but rewards you for understanding how to beat it, right? Like, not everyone in the world can go out and solve a Rubik's Cube, but you appreciate the people who go out there, know how to solve a Rubik's Cube, like in 10 seconds every single time, and you admire that for them. Like, the designer of a Rubik's Cube isn't going to have an easy mode for the Rubik's Cube,
sure.
You just brought up PTSD, Figments. I had a Rubik's Cube I tried to solve for 2 years of my childhood. I couldn't do it. Anyways, keep
But, like, that with video games, we have the option of, like, diversifying and making these as accessible as possible to people who want to play these games, and trying to make it as easy as it can for the people who just either don't have the time to play those games or just can't, for whatever reason, at the difficulty level intended to be played. Like, I think Bungie and 343 have come out and saying heroic is the intended difficulty for Halo.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's just like, but not a lot. But I think it shouldn't come at the expense of designing the game that a designer wants to make.
But why would that would be up to the designer to do?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I say Dark Souls. If Dark Souls can have an easy mode, it should. But if the designer feels that trying to make a good experience around an easy mode detracts from the difficulty they want their game to be, then maybe it's better that they don't have that difficulty choice. And maybe they design their game around what they feel should be the natural progression of their title.
So then give it a God mode. Give it a God mode, and then you don't have to change the design at all.
I would argue that you don't even have to change the design even if you incorporate difficulty levels, right? So difficulty levels come in a variety of forms. From, if it's a puzzle game, they might give you more hints. If it's a combat game, they might give you more health or them less health, and you might do more damage, and so on and so forth. But you can always have the outset and say, here is my game, this is how it's meant to be played. But here in the options, if you want to go in and deep dive and switch all these buttons off, please be aware that's not how I intended to play, which is effectively what even Bungie back in the day, heroic's what you should be playing at. If you're playing on easy, fine, we're not going to stop you. But that's it. That's the conversation. There's nothing changed to the design apart from, it's not how the designer wanted you to play it, but they also recognise that you could do that, right? I don't think it's, and that's the silly argument. Is then I saw people saying, but Dark Souls is online, and then you'll have people playing on easy mode and grinding out all the cool stuff where it's really easy, and then coming in online and ruining people's experience. It's like, well, then if you play on easy, you don't get progression for online. Like there are checks and balances here. The way I look at it is you're not taking anything away, and that's the bizarre thing. Is like, if you add all those options, the person that wants to have the punishing time loses nothing. Nothing changes for them in any way, shape or form. But the person that might really love the gothic design of Dark Souls and want to just experience the world and, and go through and explore, can't, because they can't keep up.
There's just... I honestly, at least from my perspective, both sides of this discussion are as equally valid as the other. Just simply because, games should be as accessible as possible to allow as many people as possible to play the game. That's a great thing overall. But allowing designers to design their game around something and focus so exclusively on that because they, in their mind, feel it's detrimental to be focusing on anything else, it would be at the expense of the overall experience.
Yeah,
I
you're
think that's
talking
also
about
valid, too.
scope and scale, and do we have time to go in
Yeah.
and make sure that easy mode is
Yeah.
okay? And fair comment. And not every game developer is going to have the
How would
ability.
we know if they're doing that? You wouldn't even know if they're doing that. This is the problem. And God mode solves that anyway. You don't have to redesign anything. You're just making it so that someone can't die. Like,
Well, and that's the issue with this entire discussion is that it came out of Psychonauts 2, which the developers themselves decided to add this mode to make it more accessible for their audience. They've chosen that audience, and I can understand the argument to that it leave it to the developer's vision. But at the same time, I'll say as somebody who is a huge Dark Souls fan, and I heard from people that try to give Sekiro a shot because they really love the aesthetic of it. They like the setting and the atmosphere. And then they tried it for a few hours and they're like, this isn't for me because it was too difficult. And Miyazaki's games, that to me, they're not like, if I were to even sell why they are so great, like the difficulty balancing is part of the experience, saying you got through something. But, when you think about, like, when I play his games do something in terms of bringing, like, old game design philosophies into, like, this 3D AAA space that I don't really think too many other developers do. And unfortunately, most people miss that. Like, in terms of his level designs, his progression systems, the way the bosses, like, just how well thought out these boss encounters are. Like, there's really nobody else in my opinion, there's nobody else in the industry that's as good as his team when it comes to leading in all those areas. So it's more than just the difficulty. So a lot of people don't get to experience that. And I do wonder, like, when he now is making Elden Ring, if they are going to have some other options in there to bring other people, because we know, there's people that like Game of Thrones that maybe don't like Dark Souls. And is that going to be an opportunity for him to try to explore that? Because the more people you can bring into that, the more games like that you can have made. So really, I never understand the gatekeeping amongst the gatekeeping makes no damn sense.
The gatekeeping is ridiculous. Like, Dark Souls fans are among the worst freaking fans on planet Earth.
Across the board. Across the board, though, I'd say, gatekeeping, not just in terms of difficulty, it goes down to the console wars and, who doesn't have access to my thing. At the end of the day, I talked to a developer who's been, a contractor making games for different studios for over 2 decades. And, he's basically told me that, hey, the number one thing that stops game design, it's not SSDs, it's not teraflops, it is the boardroom, it is how many people can we sell this game to? The more you can expand that, the more types of games you're going to get. And it's always interesting that the people that gatekeep, also complain about the lack of variety on the AAA space. So, find different ways to bring in other people. And you actually now can create an environment where more of these types of, other types of games other than the 4 or 5 in the AAA space that have been made the last 5 years can be made. So that was my soapbox.
But I don't understand, but doesn't God mode effectively solve the design problem?
No.
So they can go and design Dark Souls however they want to design it, and they don't have to design around an easy mode.
If the intention is to get people from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, God mode solves that, right? Because now you can't die. You can just go from point A to point B.
And you don't have to change the design.
But now it's easier to ignore the design, is the point. Like, in a God mode in Dark Souls, for instance, so much of the game is trying to understand how to beat the boss than it is just beating the boss, Okay. And you lose that if there's no punishment for what you're doing.
Yeah, I get the argument.
The person paid their $60. Who gives a rat's ass? Who gives a rat's ass? They paid their money. If they want to turn off God mode and ignore the design, who gives a rat's ass?
Well, then
let them pay their money. Like, I will not touch a Souls game because all I keep hearing about is how brutally hard they are. I won't touch them.
But like that's the same. That's the same as like saying like, who gives a rat's ass if someone paid $13 to sit in a movie theater and fall asleep? Like, okay, it got you through the entirety of the movie, but you didn't experience any of it. So no one's gonna.
Everybody wants experiences. So the one thing I'll say to that, by the way, John and Nick, you guys know what the Game Shark is, right?
Yeah.
Did either of you have a Game Shark growing up as
Yeah.
a kid? No.
I had
okay.
Game Genie.
Invincibility cheats.
Game Genie for
I
me.
used invincibility cheats and God modes all the time as a kid and as a teen and in my 20s. The best part of Crackdown is Keys to the City, where you can make yourself invincible and blow everything up.
Yeah,
it is the best part.
I have fond memories.
To me, that's less. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say I have fond memories of my old man when he's dabbled in games, but he's not particularly good, right? But he really wanted to just kill Nazis back in the day, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and he had it on PC, and he was like, I just can't do this, mate. I can't grasp it. And I was like, console. You know, what was the cheat code that was in all the games at that time? You know, like whatever it was. I was like, it's one of those. And I was like, there you go, Dad. And he honestly, for a week, he was just sitting there like sniping and just having fun. More power to you, Pa.
That's
you
right.
know, like
I've done the same in GoldenEye. I loved turning on God mode in GoldenEye and just going.
I guess for people who want to appreciate the intricacies of game design, it's sacrilege to say something like God mode should be in.
So,
because it feels like it's defeating the purpose of understanding the design.
It's back to gatekeeping. If I turn on God mode in Dark Souls, you don't know about it. You don't even know. You're playing on normal. So why does it matter?
Yeah.
It does not matter.
I think we're getting into
doesn't matter.
A designer's right.
If you want gatekeeping, then play freaking Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. That's the gatekeeping ass game right there.
So we're getting.
Understand. If some kid turns on God mode, it doesn't affect you. You can still play without God mode and appreciate the design and appreciate the boss battles and appreciate the box art and appreciate whatever the hell you want to appreciate. But that kid now will play through the game on God mode because he knows he can.
So this is the thing.
Understand.
This is the thing. We're talking now about a designer's intent. Me, say it was my job to design a game. This is how I want it to be played, and it's my freaking game, and I'll decide how I want it to be played, right? And I want you to appreciate this moment and see this visual thing and feel this energy and this emotion when you do X, Y, and Z. So I get the position. Right? And I've had similar arguments, right? I've had people coming to me like, "Oh, Sea of Thieves should have the PvE mode," and I'm like, "No, it shouldn't." And they're like, yeah, you should, because I don't care about PvP. I just want to kill all the skeletons on the island and do nothing. I was like, yeah, but they've designed the game around the premise of, who's that sales over there? Uh-oh, it's other people. Are they good or are they bad? That's the game design. And if you take that away, it's kind of boring. And it affects, because it's an online game, it affects me, because then I'm playing against people whose intentions are always hostile versus I don't know what their intentions are. And it has this knock-on effect. So I understand the argument, because am I gatekeeping by saying Sea of Thieves shouldn't have a PvE mode? You could argue I am, right? Because what does it matter to me? I still get to play my PvP. But it's the knock-on effect it has on the game's premise as a game. Now, that's a unique example, and I don't think it should apply to a single-player game, because who are you affecting? Dark Souls has online elements. And I've had the argument, you could play on God mode or easy mode and grind out all the cool stuff and then go in at the normal level and have all the stuff that other people couldn't get. So you make design decisions to accommodate for that. So it's a big topic, but I think fundamentally Twitter stands. This is how you have an adult conversation about it.
But it's just toggles.
It is, right? So we could argue about it till the cows come home. I think
we could argue about it until the sun comes down over here.
It's a fascinating conversation, but my stance will remain, I think, the more games across genres, etc., because you could have one person pick up Dark Souls and be like, oh, this is really hard. I'm going to turn on God mode and learn without threat. And then I'll try it on this mode. And then I'll bump the difficulty. That's a pathway to getting to appreciate the game and design. And if you just go in straight at this level and they can't get to that level, then they're never going to come back. I think doing that is the job of a game designer, is to think of all the different ways to get someone to understand it.
But that's right. Like, that's the thing. Yeah. Easy and not, like, having various difficulties, I can understand the argument for changing the design. But God mode removes that. Yeah. So if you don't want an easy mode, just have God mode where it's the default difficulty, but they can't die.
Yeah. So
and it solves the problem.
It's an interesting one. So, let us know in the comments below. I'm sure many Dark Souls fans will be kind. All right, we know it's the internet and we know we can't see who you are, but just think about it. Would you say that to our faces? Maybe not. Anyway, look, let's get off the topic or we'll be here for 3 hours. The last thing I wanted to talk about today on this roller coaster ride of a podcast episode, because we were getting some passionate moments in there. There's lots of... It's getting a bit frisky.
God mode's the best.
Are we going to call this episode God
Mode?
Mode?
Always been the best. They have always been the best God modes. I love them. I've used them since I was a kid. Fun fact: there was a developer on Twitter who said, "Difficulty in games and dying in games is bullshit. It is an archaic institution from the days of the arcades when games were built
to
get money out of you."
Yep.
Like developers apparently just play on God mode because that's the funnest. Like. That it all started in the arcades where it was designed to be hard, where you die constantly to keep feeding money in.
Yeah, exactly right.
It gets in the way of the experience of the game.
And I can think of plenty of games that haven't got a death state at all. Like you can just go through it. Like even if I think about
Treasure Tracker doesn't have a death state.
If I think about Little Nightmares 2, you can die in that game.
Yes, it does.
You can die in that game, but
Captain Toad does.
Captain Toad?
Or was it the Kirby game? Was it the Kirby game that doesn't have death?
Maybe, but Captain Toad does.
Okay.
Well, before Twitter takes everything out of context here, so I appreciate the challenges of games, but I also appreciate the options for others to play it the way they want. So just to summarize that,
thank you.
Because we're gonna get clipped.
Oh yeah, it's gonna get spicy.
They want to play. They don't even want to. They review their game. They want to review their games in God mode. I know that's good. Somebody's gonna say that somewhere if we don't clarify that. Yeah. And for the record, no. I don't think anyone on the XboxEra team plays on like the super easiest difficulty and just tick. No. Halo on Legendary. That's
I do.
Well, apart from Nick, but he sucks.
Wait, if you had the option to play on the super easiest difficulty in Rocket League, Nick, would you do it?
Say that again.
If you had the option to play on easy mode in Rocket League, would you do it?
Yeah, I play everything on easy. I play every game on easy.
Oh my god!
The first thing I do is check the achievements, and I see if it forces achievements for harder difficulties. That's the first thing I check. And if a game is dumb enough to force people to play on harder difficulties for an achievement, then sometimes I may start on that harder difficulty in order to get that stupid achievement out of the way. But as soon as a game has no difficulty achievements, I am straight to the easiest option, so I can have fun and enjoy the game.
You heard it here first, developers. If you want Nick to play your game at the highest level of difficulty, you need to put all the achievements at that highest level. Otherwise, he's not going to play it the way it's meant to be played.
He's not going to play more than Rocket League.
Usually, I just won't buy the game.
Yeah. He's not going to play.
I've hit that point now where I check the achievement list before I buy the game, and if it's got difficulty achievements, I just don't buy the game.
Wow. There you go. Game design. It's a tricky one. The other piece of news this week was Phil did appear on Kind of Funny. Not the X-Cast, but Kind of Funny's main show with Greg Miller and the usual gang. And it was a fun time. He talked about lots of different things. But the one topic that I saw some big reaction to again in the Twitterverse and gaming forums, etc., was his comments on preservation. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit. So I don't know if any of you guys have the quote directly to hand about what Phil said, but it was the reaction it got from other preservation outlets that kind of said Xbox is terrible at video game preservation. And I'm like,
It's all context. That's really what it is. A lot of times when people think preservation, it goes back to the fans of physical, right? The collectors, the people that like to collect discs, want to be able to turn on their console 20 years from now, plug in a disc, and have it work.
Or the people that pirate.
I have the Spencer quote in front of me.
Yeah.
So he says, "I do worry a little bit about losing our art form and the history of it. When I think about old ROMs and MAME, these things of where these old games are going to go as the hardware that's capable of running those games. I really wish as an industry we'd come together and help preserve the history of what gaming is about so we don't lose the ability to go back. On preservation, one of the things that the cloud does offer us is the ability to throw more hardware at some of the emulation scenarios to make it possible to really emulate. When we're in the cloud, we don't have to worry about the local compute compatibility to emulate those old systems. It's one of the reasons why we look at the cloud and we continue on some of our backwards compatibility work, which we're still working on, because I want those games to still be playable. End quote.
So it's interesting, and this quote about preservation, right? So this is, I think, is what I want to make a point here. Is he's talking about preservation. He is not talking about ownership. There is a key difference, right?
He's talking about being able to play those games.
Yeah, in some form, or like like you would preserve a statue in a museum, you could preserve the digital code and the ability to load it so you could see an old game.
Okay, but usually museums are owned by a foundation that isn't
and that's what he's saying. He's saying the industry should come together to somehow work out a way of preserving old games.
Sure,
and a lot of people do.
I agree with that. Yes, but. And I said this in the Discord. I'm pretty sure you guys didn't see any of this.
Nope.
But
you're going to be contrarian.
I knew.
He's going to be contrarian, folks. Buckle up.
I said 100%. Nick and John are going to 100% disagree with what I'm saying.
Okay, let's go.
I'm
strapped in.
It.
There you go.
So, my whole thing was his comments on preservation as they relate to the cloud aren't necessarily preservation. But he is specifically talking about, I hadn't read the full quote until just now. He is specifically talking about being able to throw more horsepower at the problem to solve some of the challenges with emulating certain old systems, which is okay, yeah, that's a fair point. But that isn't necessarily preservation. Yes, I guess you can make some pedantic sort of argument that he's not talking about ownership. He's talking about making sure the thing's still available. But
that's what it is.
But at the end of the day, though, it's not really effective preservation when it's in the hands of an entity whose sole existence is for the means of generating revenue for shareholders. When those shareholders stop caring, or if they even ever cared to begin with, if Microsoft loses the ability to protect that project, which they can, and they might take decades, but at some point they will, those old games go away. There's no alternate forms of making sure those games are still available to people. Like in preservation museums, like in hardware enthusiast circles.
But that's all based on an assumption, though.
Yeah.
An assumption of what? That the company
you assume. So okay. Because there's a Twitter account that pissed me off with this as well. That stupid does it play or whatever the hell. That's clearly outed themselves now. So they're talking about how well Sony and Nintendo do it simply because Sony and Nintendo allow you to play your games offline. So where does the argument sit?
The argument is DRM.
How does Sony let me play PS3 games now? I have to keep a PlayStation 3 around. How else does Sony let me? Or I can subscribe to PlayStation Now.
Anything to do with what I'm saying? Sony and Nintendo are doing this worse than Xbox. Period. I can
not
agree
according
with you
to
there.
some.
But I'm not talking about some. I'm talking about my point of view here, Nick. Don't involve weird Twitter stands. My point of view is that while the BC team and Microsoft in general are doing a really good job of keeping a lot of the games, not every game, a lot of the games around and still able to be purchased, the DRM, regardless of what side you're on, that requires that Xbox One games cannot be played off disc on a Series X without an internet connection to download any smart delivery related things, is atrocious. That should go away. 2, that I think, at least personally, DRM in all its forms should go away, but that's more of a policy thing than anything else. 3, that even if Microsoft is doing a really good job with BC, it's still at the behest of one entity that can arbitrarily decide what can and cannot be compatible. I can't play Guitar Hero 3 on my Xbox Series X.
That's a publisher who owns the rights to music that decides. Right, this is a complicated issue, but I think that
is true.
I think your argument is somewhat flawed because it's based on a lot of assumptions here, right?
Yeah. Assumptions about what?
Well, okay, yeah, I can't put in
my assumption is that good guy Phil is.
Hey, I'm Sikamikanico is talking now. All right, I've got a mute button. I can press this. Your assumption is based on a lot of, I think, and I don't want to be rude, so I'll do this delicately. Some false assumptions here. Like you talk about, I can't put in an OG Xbox disc into my Series X and play without it having to download a wrapper, so I have to be online for that. Yes, you do, because you're putting it into a different machine. If you had an OG Xbox, it would work, right?
That's right.
It's the difference between, are they preserving those games? Yeah, Microsoft are still keeping all the stores online where they can make deals with the people that made the games and let you play them still where they can. I think that's a good thing, but we can't expect, because it's a different machine, right? You can't just expect, I'm just going to put this in and it'll work. You can't do that with any other console. The way they do allow you to do it, yeah, it needs to download a wrapper because it needs to know what the hell it's playing so that it can emulate it for you, because it's not putting it in the original machine.
But that's okay. You're making assumptions about parts of my argument that I haven't even addressed yet, because I did address this in the Discord. If you saw my full rant in the Discord, I already addressed the whole emulator situation.
Okay.
Of yes, I get it. It's a different hardware solution, and you're effectively downloading an emulator specifically tailored to play that game.
Yeah.
But why not just open source the code to make that emulator so other people can do it on any machine they want?
Can I have a shot at this? I
Please.
think we're going off. I think we're going down a completely different path.
What do you mean?
So
what?
I was listening to the Kind of Funny podcast actually this morning, running around with errands, and listened to that whole segment. And if you listen to the question, the context around the entire conversation, it really was talking about preserving the ability to go back and play a game. And he did talk about some of those things that because of some technical difficulties couldn't make the transition forward, like Kinect games and things like that. So he did address that, but his point was really looking at it from a historical standpoint, looking at it from the standpoint of these games are very important in gaming history. We want to have the ability to go back and play those if we'd like. And yes, as an industry, we should all come together and figure out a way to make sure that people, when they want to go back and experience these things or see where gaming came from, where it grew up from, that these options are available to them. Now, the argument you're making, Figments, I think it's a valid conversation, but it's a different conversation. I've heard that conversation before about ownership, and the context that this preservation is being used in is about being able to be able to play those games throughout history. Had nothing to do with, hey, if I buy a game and you guys go out of business or you stop supporting gaming, am I still going to be able to plug in a disc and play this game? The fact of the matter is that across the board, with all the patches and things there is today, that
world doesn't exist.
Anymore. It's gone anyways. But regardless, we can always go back and forth on that. To me, the ownership argument is different from what his conversation was about. So if we want to have that other conversation, it is almost like another topic, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because in his context, it made perfect sense. Just, I want to be able to go back and play, let's say Half-Life 3 is coming out. I want to have an option to play, if I'm on I want to have the option to see where that started. I want to play Half-Life 1. Well, you can do that right now, through Steam. But he's really talking about, there's a lot of games throughout history that have kind of been lost through that process, right? That you can't go back and do that for.
Be it publishing deals have run out while the licensing's lost. We've had to delist it. We see it with modern games now. Forza Horizon 3, Forza Horizon 2, gone. And they give it away for 3 before they delist it, because they know at that point, we're not going to pay in perpetuity for I was turning into Porky Pig there for the Looney Tunes. They can't afford to constantly pay for licenses. I think the interesting reactions online though were taking that conversation out of context, right? I saw one article on Kotaku which was talking about he's talking about preservation, but he's trying to sell you a subscription service, man, and he means you don't own anything. That's not what he was talking about. What a bizarre take to have.
And that goes back to the stupidity of Game Pass means I don't own games when you can still buy games.
Exactly, right? And that was the hilarious thing.
The fact that, Game Pass, but the thing is, that's, okay, I'm not going to defend the Game Pass stuff because I agree with you guys. He didn't even mention Game Pass at all.
Yeah. And
Game Pass isn't, it's self-preservation. It's a delivery method. You're not preserving anything on Game Pass, especially not when games go out of Game Pass.
Yeah.
So,
and you can buy those games anyway if you want to own them.
Yeah. So, but in the context of all this other stuff regarding okay, I can't. Oh, open sourcing the end. Like what I was saying in the Discord was Microsoft could, let's just say in an ideal world, Microsoft could go out of its way to say the OG Xbox and the 360 are decades old systems at this point. Why don't we open source the operating system to allow people to create emulators for the games they own so they can just play it on whatever system they want, and all those games would be compatible. So we don't have to put in the legwork of trying to go through publisher agreements, trying to get all this yada yada, all this other stuff, when we can open source the OS code, allow anyone with a PC and 10 minutes of spare time to compile the OS into an emulator.
Maybe they will.
And allow people to just run everything.
Maybe they will.
So what you're saying is you want Microsoft to allow people to pirate their games?
I didn't say pirate. I didn't say pirate.
Okay, sorry. Preserve. Preserve is just a nice word of pirate. Like, seriously. Can we just, like, cut that bullshit? Preserve is just a nice word for pirate.
Okay, Nintendo. I'm sorry, I was arguing against fucking Reggie Fils-Aimé right now.
Because the assumption I was talking about before was that you assume, and it may be a safe assumption, you assume that in 300 years when Microsoft no longer exists, they may not release a patch that allows their games to play on consoles without the online DRM. That's the assumption really this whole argument is based on. So while I have a connection, I have no issue playing any of the games. If I don't have a connection, I may have an issue playing some of the games. So what ultimately everyone is worried about is if Microsoft decides they can't be bothered with Xbox anymore and they decide to shut the whole thing down, all of a sudden I may lose the ability to play a lot of these games. Yes?
The core fundamental assumption is that you can't trust a corporation to keep doing this forever. It's nice that they're doing it now, but good guy Papa Phil ain't going to be in charge forever. No. The next guy in line might not give a shit about BC or keeping anything compatible. So that might not even be 300 years. That might just be 10, if that even. He might even want to leave earlier than that. He's probably got a really good retirement fund going on that he can just sit on a beach for the rest of his life. You know,
remember the context that came in though. So like again, he was talking about the industry getting together and figuring out how to do something together. So basically, that takes
to do anything.
Right. So I mean, I get that. So what he's saying is, so it moves it beyond just relying on a single corporation, and that was again that just the context of that conversation. Kind of funny. He was talking about as an industry, let's come together and figure out a way to make sure these games stay around regardless of what else happens. I think he understands too. I think
if he really wants to avoid the preservationists saying, okay, well, like, just making them available for sale isn't necessarily by itself preservation. Like,
but he didn't say
probably
that.
Stand.
That's them inferring incorrect context to a lengthy quote about how he wishes the industry would do more.
As Abe just said, it's about making the games available, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
it's not about making
purchase is the implied statement there.
Just available.
No,
I think
I've already purchased them. I've already purchased my games, so I just want to know that I can keep playing them.
Yeah.
I've already purchased them. Like, I don't understand the whole BC thing. The reason why BC is so great on Xbox is because you don't have to buy again, like Sony and Nintendo make you do.
Yeah. The fact that you can even put in an old disc and it just...
That's right. Like, I've got a bunch of OG Xbox discs that I can pop into both my 360 and my Series X.
Okay, but
and play
you
them.
Already admitted earlier that because of the downloads, it doesn't just work. You still need an internet connection to get the emulator and the game on your console.
It's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick.
I don't understand. I don't understand. So
my point is that instead of lip service, it'd be cool is if instead of paying lip service to, let's get all the corporations together, yada yada yada. How about actually like going for people who are investing in policy that would force corporations' hands to do these things, because they're not going to do it by themselves. There's no profit incentive there.
Yeah, you keep going back to action. We keep going back to ownership. That wasn't really really wasn't really the topic. He's just talking about making games not get lost throughout history. Like we've seen there's a lot of games out there that unless you own that console and it still works, which that's another thing that happens. Technology doesn't stay working forever. Unless you have that old console, then you don't have access. There's games that came out on the PS1 that you will never be able to play, right? There's no like legal way to get to that. There's stuff that's come out on other systems throughout time. That even, I mean, he was discussing, some of the issues they have with, with FASA, right? Some of the old FASA games. There's games there that you can't. If I don't got a working OG Xbox One, I can't go back and play certain games. So
That's right.
So that's what he's really going to. And again, it's the context. It's not about ownership. It's about making sure these games don't die out, that they don't just become a memory. And in that context, nothing he said was I thought wrong. It is another discussion. Ownership, I think, is a fair discussion. It's not. I mean, I don't really care about physical, but I understand people that do collect and do care about that. That's a separate topic, though, in my mind.
Yeah.
Fun fact. If you read the licensing agreement, you technically don't own those physical games.
Oh my God! Not this argument again.
There's just no way to police it.
So what I'm hearing is, Nick, you expect like EA to come knocking on your door for playing an old copy of like football, FIFA Football 2006 because we don't sell that anymore, and that's we don't want you to do that.
If you can spend 30 seconds not cutting me off. I was just about to say, the fact that they didn't have a way to police it is the only reason people don't know. That's the thing. Technically, Nintendo can come to your fucking door, knock it down, and take the game away. Legally, they can do that. They're just not going to bother.
Guys.
But if you read the licensing agreement, you don't own those games either. And this is the problem. No one, look, give it long enough, guys, and you'll be able to pirate them yourselves. Just give it long enough, and eventually you'll be able to pirate it. And you can preserve everything yourself, all you want. We're up to 360 and PS3. We have Switch emulators. We have, I think, even PS4. We may even be up to PS4. So if you really care that much, just go pirate it yourself. Like, seriously, oh my God, it's such a dumb argument. And we dance around the word piracy. It's all piracy. That's what it is. It's just piracy.
We don't own anything.
If you care that bad, wait till the emulators catch up and just go and pirate it, man. I've got my OG discs here. I can't.
Why would I need to pirate it if I own a copy of the game and I can just rip it off the CD? What?
Well, there you go.
What is this argument?
Do that then.
We are available for children's parties, by the way.
Oh my God, it's just.
So
dumb. At least Microsoft is giving me the option to only have to own one console to play all generations of games. I admitted
that Microsoft is doing a better job here than Sony and Nintendo. Not that it's the best job that I think they could possibly do, but it is a better job.
Microsoft can't just force the hand of a third party. That's why this BC situation is such a cluster, because they rely on licensing agreements. Ones that say you don't own anything.
Decisions that make DRM go away. That's what I want.
Yeah, but unfortunately, as long as games are made by big companies, right? You're never going to have
it's not,
that world.
The argument is not living in the real world. It's just not reality.
5 years ago, people thought right to repair wasn't living in the real world, and now we're getting right to repair legislation across the entire Western world.
What's
I missed that transition.
Right to repair.
I'm red carding the conversation. Right to repair is basically I buy a device. I can take it in somewhere and repair it, because, for example, Apple would be like, you can't repair this unless you go to a specific place that charges specific parts and has a contract with us. You can't just go and repair it yourself. Now there's legislation being introduced in the center of the world, aka the United States of America.
EU too. EU actually got it first.
Except,
the Europeans some credit.
But there's a load of devices not on the list, which are the ones that people wanted on the list, like iPads and other things, right? So who gives monkeys? I have the right to repair my refrigerator. Okay, cool.
This must be just an American thing, because as far as I know, here you could just, if someone can repair it, they can repair it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's very American thing. Their warranties are rubbish.
So this is that America's the center of the world, and how we live life is how everyone else has to live their life. Oh, right, it's that thing, right? Okay.
This episode's got very spicy. There's a lot of passion. We've touched on a lot of meaty.
It's like when I hear Americans be like, "My Xbox died after a month. Am I screwed?" Take it back to the retailer and get another one, idiot. Like, is that not a thing in America? Like, it is here.
Most stores
I'll just
have
take it back to
14-day
the store
return
and get another one.
policies. So no.
14-day return policies.
What?
Madness.
Yeah. I have to spend $5,000 a year at Best Buy to get 45 days. So
Wow.
So the problem's not the corporations. The problem is the country that you're in. Is that right?
Policies.
I mean, without policy to force hands, then it's not going to get done.
So, like I said, the problem's the country, though. Your argument is the fact that it's from an American perspective, because in Australia I don't have those problems.
Lads, we've gone way off here. We're way off. The tangents have increased.
Nick is just mad I don't agree with him. Let's just go with that.
It was an interesting discussion.
It's just a silly argument.
And again,
it's
Twitter stands.
An argument it's not based in reality and how things work. It's just strange.
Twitter stands. This wasn't how to have an adult conversation. I just want to make that clear. The first one was
Please
clip
this ad nauseum. I would love to see the filters you throw on this. Maybe give Nick a little twirl on his mustache so he could look like a snidely little French villain or something. I don't know.
It'd be interesting. I'm actually really interested to see the YouTube comments on this, because I know a lot of our hardcore community will have opinions on this conversation. So yeah, interesting times. But anyway, it's now that wonderful time in the podcast where we get to thank that very community and the wonderful people that support us, which is
that put up with us.
That too. Or maybe they put up with maybe more you than us. I don't know.
Maybe.
But we want to say a big thank you to our patrons. Obviously, we've got around 70 of you blighters at the moment, but our tier 2s and 3s who are supporting us with all of that big money, we're really super grateful. So much love to Croat56, Blast the Bass, Nodorius, Not Jack, Sowing Shade, The Scarecrow 121, Torn Raptor, Crazy Spaz, VK Andrew, Brit, Cerys, Nottian, Gabchrist, Hexa, J Rapper, K, Kiro Senko, Cartoon Soldier, Red Sun, Shadowgasm, and Running Riot. We love you guys. Thank you very much for all of your love. And with that, it makes a lovely segue into our favourite time. And I believe we're popping Bad Mother's cherry here with a series of community questions. And I think, brace yourself, this is going to be a ride. All right. Let's hope none of them are about game preservation or ownership or easy modes in video games. Fingers crossed. Let's go. What have we got now?
Okay. The first one. Now, we lost Big M iced coffee milk, but we have a new patron whose name I like equally as much, which is good old Collingwood, because I'm a Collingwood supporter. So it's good to know we have a patron that also goes for Collingwood.
How do we know this isn't just you with an alt account?
Because I also am a patron. Okay. Now, new patron here. 2 questions. How come you can't get Phil Spencer to appear on your podcast? And yet Justine can get Phil Spencer to appear twice on her show in just over 12 months. Not a diss on Justine, but what does she do different?
I mean, Justine has over a couple million subscribers on YouTube.
She's a lot bigger than we are.
She's been at this a lot longer.
I think go on.
Go.
I was going to say, I think I saw someone later on in the Patreon lounge quote that question and put, she's internet famous, right? And
that's right.
That's the gist, right? Is regardless of our love for the brand, and we feel we're doing the right things, and we know we're growing scarily fast at this point.
Haven't grown enough.
We haven't got that clout yet. We will get there. We believe that. We believe we're doing the right things to get to that point. And it's definitely a goal and ambition, but it's just not yet. We're working on it.
Yeah. I mean, what's the smallest outlet Phil has been on? The smallest. It's probably kind of funny.
Probably, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Kind of funny.
But it's kind of funny as an outlier because they were formed from really popular content creators and journalists and stuff from other outlets. So
yeah, but they're still big.
Yeah, they're still pretty big.
Yeah.
Kind of funny still has almost 300,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And that's just the main channel, right?
Go tell your friends we can get that big.
We have 7.5.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
Pretty much.
Number 2. Flight Simulator is coming out at the end of the month and will be the first Microsoft title to come out as a new gen only release. Is that
No.
true? I thought that was Medium.
No, actually, it is true. It is true because like Medium was published under Xbox, the indie program, not Microsoft directly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Microsoft didn't publish it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
that is true.
So
Okay, and will the first Microsoft title to come out as a new gen only release? Is it worthy of the honor?
It's an incredible game. It's an incredible simulator.
Even Metacritic says so.
Yeah.
So
That's your
You know?
998 banger or something.
But,
you
I mean,
know?
they have been doing a lot of. I'm really excited to see the performance of that game because they've been doing a lot of performance patches on PC. But even then, it's just that thing is a resource hog. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be. Like, I'd be very interested to see how it runs on Series X.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a fitting first game for next gen only because it is going to be something that's more of a niche type of. It's going to have a niche interest on console, I'm sure. But from a technical standpoint, if somebody really wanted to see something that was going to push their Series X, push technology in general because of the use of the cloud, that is. I can't think of another game that's using more next gen things
for sure.
Than Flight Simulator. So
I'm intrigued to see how it performs on console. We should get a code. I'm intrigued as to whether the community would like us to do a console because I did the review for Flight Sim when it came out on PC, and I believe from memory I gave it a 9 because it is an extraordinarily broad, well-made, deep simulator that you can just lose yourself and go and explore the entire world. Curious to see if everyone out there thinks we should do a console version review. I'm sure we can. I don't think I should do it. I think we should maybe let someone else have a stab and see what they think. But yeah.
John, I got a question for you. And I'm asking this for Nick. Is there an easy mode in Flight Simulator?
There is an easier, there's lots of assists you can turn on. But unfortunately, the people that designed the aircraft didn't feel that you should have just an autopilot and stuff, so they turned it all off. And you crash into the ground and die.
Yeah.
Nick's not going to play it then.
No, I will not.
You should. It's a beautiful game.
Okay. I think you all know what time it is.
Hang on, was that the whole question? I'm sure there was a second part to that Flight Simulator question.
No.
Was it?
Is it worthy of the honor?
Yeah. Yes,
That's
it
the
is.
second part.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
and I said yes. Even Metacritic approves.
Yeah, I'm
90
thinking of
plus.
another Flight Sim question later on in the lounge. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
It's a Cerys question.
Cerys. Yeah. And this is full on. There's
God.
segments and parts and extra questions. This is far out. Okay. Hello, panel. No time for frivolity as Cerys is fuming, and this will come across as crying to teacher, but I don't care. I pay your salaries. You work for me. I don't need to start any fights, but it's a stance I have seen Xbox fans hold for years and one I see oft repeated elsewhere. It also came at a time this week where people have been happy to gatekeep games away from exclusivity.
Oh, no.
So, an argument was had this week regarding a weakness around e-games from Xbox and hence in Game Pass, which really rubbed me the wrong way. I just missed this discussion in the Discord, just missed out. Firstly, the actual experiences of parents with children were all often ignored over what I think takes. Secondly, there seemed to be many who thought that Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft were enough, ignoring the comments that children can and do start from an early age and for whom these are not appropriate. Finally, many people seem to think that catering for a wider audience would not be an obvious benefit to Game Pass and Microsoft and wasn't really worth it. Some sentiments included, children play everything. They can play Fortnite or Halo or COD, kids play anything. I don't think catering for more e-content will grow Game Pass in any significant way. I think it's weird to hold Microsoft accountable for something like more e-content. Go somewhere else if you want that kind of thing.
That is some
All
weird
very
takes.
stupid takes. All very stupid takes.
Mm-hmm.
So my broad question would be, do you panel feel as annoyed as I do that seemingly so many Xbox fans value this content so little or are happy for Microsoft to never expand their offering? Do you think that it being difficult or there being no one to buy is excuse enough for Xbox to seemingly drag their feet? Do you think that catering for more families would be of negligible effect on Game Pass? Imagine you play games elsewhere or seldom. Would you as parents consider something like Game Pass for your kids if it had more on the service tailored for them? Would you buy a Nintendo Game Pass, for example? serious stuff, and something people were happy to dismiss as being too emotional or similar when arguing for more inclusiveness. I know you boys have spoken before, as has Zedox, that to expand, Microsoft need to cover as many potential games as possible. It just seems like a serious issue which people seem happy to dismiss. Also, though I was missing last week, I appreciated John's remarks about the Pride controller. Warner Brothers marketing being so gleefully embarrassed with so many controllers does seem like a slap in the face from MS. And when you consider WB is happy to work with and profit from the works of a transphobe, it really hurts a little that they value them above a portion of gamers they otherwise serve pretty well. Thanks all. Back to stupid, non-emotional questions next week. Although, there is one other part. This is the last part. Anyway, something flippant. Oh, God. Okay, lovely Nick. I shall box this up. This is my mood-lightening post question. You may ask whenever you feel it most appropriate. I don't even want to say this. It gets full on. Okay, so Cerys is suffering a little from an issue in her sensitive region today and has been advised a tampon covered in yogurt is the best cure. Panel, in bouts of illness, what is the strangest home remedy you have heard? I'm Greek. Our strangest home remedy is put Windex on it, remember? That's what my big fat Greek wedding told everyone. As to the I mean, we've said this 100 times on this podcast. They need more kids' games. Like, that's just a no-brainer. Like,
Yeah.
What a way to follow up a question of kids' games with something like that, though.
yeah.
God.
Of course they do. Like, of course they need more kids' games. Like, that.
I think they're just afraid to try, really.
Yeah.
No,
Like,
Phil
they
has
are
said-
100% afraid to try. Like, Phil has said countless times they need more kids-focused games, but, like, they keep not trying.
Well, we've also
No,
we're not
right,
going to
though.
force studios to make things they don't want to make,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
studios
that's another part of it.
go
too.
off and do what they want to do. Yes, they definitely need E-rated content. I, for one, let's not kickstart the debate again about accessibility, but when Psychonauts 2 said it has a God mode, my first and immediate thought was, that's brilliant, because it's a great, fun, cartoony, bright game, and I will be able to plonk my little boy in front of it and not worry about having to come and supervise him. He'll be able to go explore and come up against enemies, and he'll think he's succeeding. I won't tell him I've put it on, right? And I'm sure there's going to be some tryhards out there who'll be like, that's disgusting, you're robbing him of his achievement. Oh, get out of it. He's going to just have fun, and that's all I want. So yeah, I fully agree. I want to see more stuff from Microsoft in Game Pass that's E-rated.
I said the same thing about Ratchet and Clank when I saw that it had that God mode where there's an easy mode where you can't die. I was like, great, I'll be able to just sit him on it and he'll be able to play. Same with, that's why he loves Astrobot. Well, I think that's why he loves Astrobot, because in Astrobot you can't die. Like, you might jump off a cliff and you just spawn right back where you were and keep going. Like, and he just plays, and that's all there is to it. Like, it's, I don't know. Like, again, it was all built from the arcades, guys. Like, the games were designed to extract money out of you at the arcades. That's why you die so easily and frequently. That's not a thing when you're at home. Like, dying just gets in the way. It just gets in the way of you playing the game. Like, I don't know.
I like the challenge, but moving on from that part of it, some of the other things that Cerys talked about. By the way, hello, Cerys, my first time here, and want to say hello to one of our best members of our community.
Hells
yeah, brings a lot to it. Yeah, so we always appreciate everything you bring and the insight, but kind of going back to what she was talking about with I get what she was saying, because a lot of times you do hear some of those excuses, and a lot of it just comes back to people protecting whatever the corporations are doing. I mean, fortunately, one of the things that's happened over the last few years is Phil Spencer's figured out a way, and with his team, they figured out a way to sell to the board a platform, and that's going to need a lot of diversity. It's going to need to appeal to a lot of people, and when you think about the gaming industry, like how big it is, like it's 200 billion, whatever last year, and it's supposed to get a lot bigger over the next 5 years. It's bigger than all these other forms of entertainment. And one of the other things that really we didn't discuss today, and it might be worth something to think about coming up is how the barriers between the creators and the community and people across the world are all kind of coming down. It is one of the few things there is in the world right now that actually has the potential to bring people together, right?
Yep.
To make people think about having empathy. And I think it's okay that we're having these conversations, because a lot of times, I heard that conversation even going back to the God mode with Psychonauts, where, people were arguing against it because they're thinking about reviewers. And it's like, well, get out of your damn bubble. And it's not just about you. It's not just about your gaming cred or this reviewer that you have a rivalry with. It's about, think about these other audiences, think about these other people. And I did see some people go, oh, I didn't really think about, disabled people, or I wasn't really thinking about the kids. And that to me is good, because we are so segregated right now, like outside of gaming and so many things with the politics and things, that like it is something that gaming can do. It can bring some empathy, understanding, bringing people together. Like us, we're all from different countries. You find out that you have a lot more similarities than differences in terms of what people in different countries want, except for Australians. They are a little bit weird, but I'm just kidding, Nick. I'm kidding.
No, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I honestly do not understand.
I know, we are strange. We have like really fair consumer rights and stuff. What weirdos we are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm more aligned to the Australian approach to life.
Yeah. Trust me, if you guys were to come live here, you'd probably be surprised that maybe how much better it is. But anyway.
Wait, aren't there giant spiders like there is in Dark Souls?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, except for maybe
not where
the
I am.
spiders.
That's all up north. That's all up north. As long as you come to Melbourne, you'll be perfectly fine. Just don't go up north.
I'll try and take my next holiday in Melbourne. We'll come by. Put some shrimps on the barbie.
But the gist of it, I think, to answer Cerys' question, that stuff is happening. Phil and their crew have talked. Booty was talking about establishing studios in other countries that there's no real AAA presence, and making AAA studios there, like India and things. And I think what you're going to start to see is, and as we kind of learned in our Netflix of Games, article / video that that we put together, that. Yeah, go watch that. That for Netflix to get as big as they did, they had to learn how to branch. They had to eventually branch out. They had to get the quality up, and then eventually they had to become more international. Eventually, they had to look for content for kids, and that is how you grow that engagement as a platform. So that stuff will happen, and it is the responsibility of them to make it happen. The business people, if they want to hit their goals, they will have to make that happen. And the gatekeepers need to just get with the times and stop gatekeeping. We're beyond.
It's strange that this argument has to come from the second oldest person today. I'm the second oldest today, aren't I?
I think I'm the oldest.
Yeah, as I'm saying, I'm the second oldest. I was going to say it's weird that this argument has to come from the oldest person, but then I remembered I'm actually the second oldest today.
Congrats. First time for everything.
I think a lot of this God mode and easy mode, it all comes a little bit from nostalgia. So when we were kids playing games, we didn't have games with God modes and this and that and the other. We had to just get good and beat really, really hard games. But gaming was also a tiny niche medium that selling 100,000 copies was a big deal back then. And part of the reason gaming is as big as it is now is because it's more accessible. This is what the dummies don't understand. YouTube has a dedicated app now for kids. Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, they've all got dedicated sections for kids, and because kids are consuming a lot of content these days and more than ever. And that's why parents want to have these avenues where they don't have to stress that adult content is going to be mixed with the kids' content.
Correct.
And they want to be able to sit there. I love the reason, people hear that I've let my 5-year-old play Fortnite and they're like, oh, that's a violent shooting game. Man, it's not. There's no blood, there's no gore, and they have some of the best parental controls I've seen in a game. Better than Roblox.
Yeah.
Far better than Roblox. Roblox has surprisingly horrible parental controls.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of
It
Roblox's
shocks
controls
me
at all.
in Roblox, the stuff I can't block. In Fortnite, I can block everything. No one can see my son's gamer tag. No one can chat with him. No one can voice chat with him. They can't do anything. All he can do is just play against randoms where they don't know who he is. He's completely anonymous. Or he can play with all his cousins, who I have added to his friends list, and he can't receive any more friend requests. Like, Fortnite's one of the best things for kids to play because it's not gory. It's cartoons.
Yeah.
Like, he just loves seeing Marvel characters there, and he loves seeing, like, gaming is as big as it is partially because of the accessibility of it now.
Yeah.
So
That
increasing that accessibility is only then going to increase the industry again.
Yeah.
Like,
that doesn't mean every game has to be accessible. So
no, it doesn't have to be.
No,
They
we're
don't
saying
have
the
to.
industry. Yeah, we're talking about the industry, and,
Yeah.
and
no,
you know,
industry, yeah.
There's
and
still
the
a
irony
place,
on
there's still a
Go
place
ahead.
for those hard as balls games. And guess what? Those hard as balls games will sell less than the games that are super accessible.
Yeah.
And that's fine. If that's
Just
what
like
the
how
developer wants.
R-rated movies don't sell as much
That's right.
at the box office.
That's
as
exactly
PG-13.
right. That is exactly right. And if that, like, most movie studios now expect that the R-rated movies won't make as much money as
It's
the
also
others.
why they push for a PG-13 if they can.
Correct.
Because
That's
they
why a
can
lot
make
of them
more
do
money,
this.
because it's more accessible and they don't have gore and da-da-da-da-da.
That's right. Exactly right.
There you go.
It's
you know, the
In the
irony,
end,
guys, is that
they need it.
we're all of us gamers we're getting older, and at some point, these people that are gatekeeping are gonna be like, man, like all these games are too hard for me if they don't
Yeah.
calm down in some of those difficult. You know, you're not gonna keep those super quick reflexes
Nope.
forever
No, that's
if you want
right.
to keep gaming.
But
So
I just find how funny it is that, like, every time there's an argument about, like, accessibility in games, it always comes back to Dark Souls. It's like, I don't know.
hey,
Because
I feel like
they're
this
the
point, just leave Dark
fans-
Souls alone.
that they're the fans that argue against it the most.
yeah, they bring it on
That's
themselves.
right.
Because it's always conversations about, well, Dark Souls should have an easy mode.
Well, no.
And then the
So
fans
should
react.
Cuphead. So should Cuphead.
Yeah.
I would love if Cuphead had a God mode. I
It
haven't
doesn't.
gone back to that game.
Just
because I
like
don't know if
rated
I
R
wanna
movies,
put
it
myself
doesn't.
through it.
The developers don't feel it needs one.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm not playing their game anymore. Like, it's just.
You
like,
don't
it-
have to. The glory of having multiple options.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I look at something like Cuphead and I think, what would it lose if it had a God mode right now? If they patched in an invincibility mode, what would the game lose?
True, but here's an interesting question on Cuphead. It's getting a Netflix show, right?
Yeah,
Is that a Netflix show aimed at adults or aimed at children?
or kids.
Interesting.
I know.
I wonder if they're going to have a fun time on that game. Probably not. Or maybe they'll get good. Who knows?
In the end, yes, Microsoft definitely needs more kid stuff.
Now, on to the more
And-
important conversation.
yep.
What's the weirdest... what's the weirdest medical home remedy you've heard or used in your lives? And we'll start with Abe. No
I was trying
pressure.
not to look at you. I was trying to do like I did in school. Like if I don't look at him, you know what? And I always used to get called on first.
There you
too. The
go.
teacher could tell.
I could tell. I could tell. Have you got one?
Oh, let's see. So remedies. So me personally, like when I think about remedies, I've never. I try to go natural stuff, but nothing too crazy. And I think the reason why I, never got into the too crazy stuff, I think I just have memories from, being a kid. And, my mom used to put together some crazy stuff. Like it was just like, I think she sometimes thought she was like new magic or was like witch or something. And she would put these concoctions together, and I don't know if she actually believed it, because she just seemed like she really did believe some of these concoctions. But it's like, you drink this, and like in some countries or back in the day, like this would cure that, like like she'd just come up with crazy stories to go with that. So I think as I got older, I was self-conscious about that. So I've never really sold that to my kids as well. I do go natural when I can, but yeah, nothing that I personally make, and I want to thank my mom for that.
Okay, fair. I'll give everybody else some time. I guess the biggest home remedy that I still do to this day is, and I do it to my kids too. All right, and I think it works. All right, so maybe other parents can pipe up in YouTube comment section, but vapor rub on your feet and then a pair of socks over the top when you've got a really bad cold.
Yeah,
Works.
my wife
Don't know
does
why.
that with the kids.
Don't know why.
She does that with the kids.
It works. It's I don't know if it's psychosomatic, but it works, and I'm all for it.
But would you call that strange though? Kara said a strange one.
Yeah, I said that's strange.
Yeah,
I'd argue putting Vicks somewhere on your body for a cold's probably not that strange.
Yeah, but your feet
Maybe
is a
that's
bit
just
odd. Yeah, but you think Vicks is on your chest. You know, if you watch a Vicks vapor rub advert, they're not
I
like
know, it's for the chest.
grab your child's foot and rub it in. Like it just doesn't. Yeah, but it's a thing. Other than
So
that,
now we don't. That's John. That's your version of letting your hair down. So we know. That's your version
what
of
hair?
weird.
What hair? What about you, Figments? You got one?
I mean, not really. I usually follow what's on the back of the box.
There you go. Not a home remedy man. There you
Oh
go.
no, my mom is a nurse, so from like when I was a kid, like I have this strange fear of like deviating from the directions on the back of medicine packets or whatever. So I never do. If it says if it says you can only take 2 every 4 to 6 hours, I put an alarm for every 4 to 6 hours to make sure that I'm within that time period, so that I'm taking 2 of these Advil and eliminating my headache, and I know exactly what time to put 2 more in.
Wow.
I don't go.
Yeah, but this isn't about not following directions. This is more about strange home remedies like
Yeah, like
eating
no, that's what I'm
certain-
saying. I don't really have home remedies because I
Okay.
just follow whatever the medicine tells me to do.
Fair enough. Nick, you got one?
Okay. Oh, I made the joke about the Windex one from my big fat Greek wedding. How Greeks just spray Windex on everything to fix it, which
Is it true?
crap.
Oh.
It's crap.
Oh.
I don't know. The only one that I would qualify, I guess, as a strange one is someone once, because I get migraines every now and again, someone once told me to try something. They called it black aspirin.
Aye.
And I'm
You
like,
told me about
what
this.
the hell is... Yeah, I did tell you about this. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And they're like, so you take 2 aspirin, dunk it in a glass of Coke and drink it. And I was like, okay. So I tried it and it worked.
Wow.
Got rid of the headache.
There you go.
Something about the caffeine and the reaction with the aspirin and it boosts it. I don't know how it works. I'm no doctor or a chemist. But yeah, it seemed to work. 2 aspirin, dunk it in a glass of Coke and drink that.
There you go. Pro
Worked
tips.
real well.
Pro tips. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Cerys, for
Trust me,
an excellent
it
question.
really does work. It's great. Okay, next. Where are we? Okay, another new patron, VRG. Although Flight Sim is around the corner and Game Pass mitigates this problem, there appears to be some grumbling online about the lack of Xbox game releases since the launch of the new consoles. Certainly, the delay of Halo Infinite left a gap in Xbox's schedule. From a purely PR perspective, i.e. not what is best for consumers, should Microsoft have pushed the PC release of Gears Tactics to the Xbox Series X launch, making it a true launch title? I'm sure Sony could have pushed out Miles Morales on the PS4 before the PS5 launch, but they smartly waited. I actually kind of agree.
Yeah, I think it's an old question that I think we discussed back when the Series X came out as well. They probably should have waited and held on to a couple of games, but
I reckon they should have.
it wouldn't have hurt, I don't think. But
No.
Is an RTS a big? I think they would have seen more sales of Gears Tactics if they had done that on console.
They would have.
For sure.
Yeah, that's probably a good point.
Because
great.
launching with the console is marketing in and of itself.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's still got the Gears name to it, and it's still, they probably should have held on to it.
But
I think they even said that at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of tactics, I think it is one of the most underrated games that Microsoft's published in the last few years. I beat that thing, and it was a really good game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you guys bring up a good point. at the end of the day, though, like none of these consoles are going to be available to grab readily on the shelves, or at least not the Series X for, gosh, it's going to be some point in 2022, right? Maybe before that is. So it's like when people keep talking about that, at the end of the day, it's like people know what they're getting. The people, the enthusiasts that are getting in, they're still not able to keep stock. So I just think it's overblown. It's part of the conversation in the console wars, but the actual consumer that's buying this for the most part, I mean, everybody knew that Halo wasn't going to be there at launch. You know, they could have canceled your pre-order or resold your console. So I just never really thought that discussion. I thought that it was worth a discussion, but it was a little bit overblown in my opinion.
I mean,
because most people understand that the whole game argument's a little bit of a myth. Like, new consoles sell out generally regardless of whether there's games or not, because people just want something new.
Yeah.
Which is what's happening right now. Series X and PS5s can't be found anywhere because people keep buying them despite the fact that they have no games.
I think Microsoft, even though they've got no games yet, you know, I think they won whatever connotation you want to put to that. You know, June MPD. Yeah, no, they
when
dollar
Nintendo
value
sold the most units, but Xbox made the most money.
Yeah, so you know, they're clearly
and more stuff.
Yeah, it is what it is. But yes, it probably would have been a smart move, but they didn't do it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
and yet they've still sold every console they've been able to make.
So I guess they're probably not too
it
fussed.
ultimately wouldn't have made a difference. Like, that's the funny part about it, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
even if Halo had come out last November, they would not have sold any more units than they did.
Yep.
Because they made X amount and sold X amount. So
and beyond that, I don't know if I'm in the minority on this. I did not mind that especially knowing that they weren't up to speed on actually being able to really leverage the technology. Like, we know that they didn't have a lot of time with it. So a lot of that is just from a PR standpoint or from an image standpoint. Like, in terms of actually leveraging the console, you're like, none of the games that are going to do that are truly going to leverage it coming out in that launch window. Like, even if they would have had these studios beforehand, stuff that's coming out then was game design for the Xbox One.
Yeah.
You know, like all that stuff. So I'm satisfied with the fact that most of their big AAAs are going to have enough time with the new tools and, you know, development environment to really, even if it's going to be across platforms, to kind of figure out ways to leverage the Series X. So I was okay with that from the get-go.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm fine with it. I'm looking forward to the next couple of years, really. It's going to be nuts.
Bad.
Yeah.
Okay, DeoGame. In his interview with Kind of Funny, Phil basically laid out his plans for events going forward. For E3, the focus seems to be primarily on games that are imminent, i.e. within the next year and a half, whereas the announcements at the TGAs are more theatrical and forward-looking to grab attention. With this in mind, do you see a scenario wherein Xbox reveals something like Project Dragon or Kojima at this year's TGAs, or do you think, to avoid an Everwild Crackdown 3 scenario of opening the floodgates too early, they show something more imminent like Compulsion or Coalition's next game? Would an acquisition maybe work at the TGAs, given that it is A, forward-looking, and B, theatrical? I think we've seen the end of acquisitions being announced at shows, personally.
Yeah.
I think we will just see them in blog posts now, random whatever announcements, because it helps set expectations properly for shows. See, the problem is, and this is Phil kind of... Remember that time I said Phil has put himself in a weird spot with the shelf now?
Yeah.
Like, he's now set this expectation where people look behind him now constantly. He kind of addressed this on Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
And talked about it. And he said himself that he's put himself in a weird spot. And Microsoft have done the same. We bemoaned for the first year or so we were doing this podcast how everything is wait for E3. Like, they save everything for E3 and never spread their... It's like... You should have noticed over the last year that they're learning from that mistake now.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just saving. Like, Bethesda was just announced out of nowhere in a blog post. It wasn't. They could have held on to that for the TGAs, couldn't they? TGAs were only 3 months later, and the deal wasn't. Couldn't they have held on to it or no?
As soon as you sign a letter of intent, they have a public responsibility to their because they're a public company that they have to legally say.
They have to report to their shareholders, and it has to be made in the public record. Yeah. It can't be it can't be an under the table deal.
Which is why
so it can only be if they're private.
Yeah. So I think you're right in that you shouldn't expect them now at every show, because I think it was extremely fortunate and lucky that they got as many lined up for E3 that they did. Really, really that must have
in 2018.
Yeah, that must have been one hell of an attempt.
Buying spree.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah,
different needs now too, right?
Yes.
Like it's not at the time people questioned, outside of a handful of people that were really engaged with the news and understood what that structure change really meant for Xbox. Outside of that really small percentage of gamers, most people did not believe Microsoft was invested in gaming at the time. So they needed to use that big stage to send that message. But now they've sent that message and people have heard that message. And now we're probably getting conversations that are the opposite, the fear of, the acquisitions and things like that, all that silliness. But now they've also changed over their marketing. They've brought in people from Netflix, and I think we can see that for them now, it's about staying in the mind share all year long. It's not just about winning E3. That's not what's going to make or break their platform. They need to have news. And I think whether it was intentional or not, when they were able to drop that Bethesda announcement, it was at a time where I think it was relatively quiet. In fact, I know it was, because we see our forums and Discord get a little bit silly, get a little bit harder to mods or moderate at times when it gets a little quiet in gaming, when there isn't news. And at that time there was a kind of a stir about like, what are they doing, what's going on, and so that kind of dropped on a really quiet day where it had the attention of everybody. And I think that's a good time to do that. Give those studios the attention, give them the spotlight. And then when they go into gaming events, the audience is going to know it's about the games. It's going to be about the developers. Don't go in there looking for acquisitions in a way that, and I think Miles kind of smartly brought that to the attention when everybody was expecting acquisitions to drop this E3. It's like, is that really the best, is that really the best idea? And I think he made a really good point leading into that, you really want to highlight your studios that you have, the games. It shouldn't just be,
now look what
you don't want to have.
Yeah. Especially not when like now Microsoft's at a point where they could just release a blog post and they're dominating the news cycle for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's it. It wasn't like that before, but now we're in a position now where Microsoft can just do those things.
Yeah.
They can pull a Sony and just announce some random thing on a Tuesday that no one sees coming, and now people are going to be like, it'll shift the narrative of the console war for a month, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, but the argument that maybe save some of the future games for TGAs is an interesting one, because the TGAs, obviously, in terms of viewership, are probably bigger than everything else. Bigger than E3, bigger than all that. So you would have to be selective about what you choose to reveal at the TGAs, which is probably why Microsoft revealed the Series X there.
Yeah. And in terms of what we could expect at this year's TGAs, if the Kojima thing is accurate and it's happening,
it'll be there.
It's definitely
there.
gonna
Oh my
be there.
God, if for nothing else, then because Jeff thinks he's Kojima's best friend.
That's right.
And will want that game as the highlight of the TGA. Like,
but will he though? As an Xbox exclusive, will he though?
I still remember, and I'm not knocking Jeff, right? But I still remember catching, like, I don't know why, his facial expression live after the Series X reveal. He was like, and that was the Series X. How about that?
Look,
You're ruining
your Xbox. How cool.
You guys are ruining your chance to get Jeff on the show. Yeah, I just want to.
Maybe he had a moment.
I want to see the mixed emotions as he's standing there with his buddy, his friend, and introducing his next project.
Xbox exclusive.
Like, welcome to Xbox, Jeff.
Yeah.
I am dying to see how that pans out.
Yeah.
If he has in fact signed that deal or is about to sign that deal and is making an Xbox exclusive and Microsoft chooses the Game Awards to reveal it, dying to see his reaction. Absolutely dying.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
It'll be hilarious. Okay. DirtyFlint. Hello, you beautiful boys. I have a story that's here mostly to make you cringe. Years ago, I won a signed DS. The signer was John Carmack. I didn't know who this was and only wanted the DS. So when it arrives, I shoved it in my pocket and went on my way. Of course, the name was rubbed off. I now regret destroying this collectible. Have any of you completely ruined a valuable item of any kind? Love the podcast. I love this question because as a recently former collector, I very much like this question. Have I ruined? I don't believe I have because my OCD won't allow it. My mum has. Like, I'm annoyed that my mum didn't keep boxes for stuff when I was a kid. Like I now do for my kids stuff. Like I sort of try and pick and choose the toys that I think of theirs may be worth something one day, and I keep the boxes. But my mum didn't. So, for example, in grade 2, my mum got me 2 of those Nintendo crystal screen Game & Watches. So they're like this wide. I've still got one of them. I sold the Mario Brothers one last year. They're just a Game & Watch built on an LCD screen that is see-through. But she didn't keep the box for them. So I just have the actual units themselves and not the boxes. And with the boxes, they are worth an absolute fortune with the boxes. Still worth a fair bit without. But, mate, that cardboard makes such a difference
it's
to the
crazy.
value of something. I mean, look at Mario 64.
Yeah,
It just sold for 1.5 million.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, hold on a second. So a sealed copy of my Mario 64 got 1.5 mil. What would my non-sealed but mint condition boxed copy of Mario 64 get? I wonder.
Why couldn't you go and get it sealed and then claim it was a mint sealed?
Yeah, I know. I probably could because it's in perfect condition, as are most of my Nintendo 64 games.
Quick, go make a couple of million Australian dollars, and then you'll be able to buy us all coffees.
Even if my copy could get 1,000, I'd be happy.
I don't know. I don't know if this is a collectible. It was important to me. I designed a map for a Halo 5 map design competition, for Ghost in the Shell, the movie with Scarlett Johansson, and the top prize was going to some esports Halo 5 MLG event and get flown out there and all that sort of thing. And then the second prize, which is what I actually wanted, was a bunch of Boomco Nerf toys. One was like a brute spiker, shoots Nerf stuff, and the other one was the massive, and it's somewhere behind me, massive Halo Needler. There's a picture of me on Instagram with it. I love the damn thing.
Yes.
I love that thing. It lights up, it animates, all the needles go down when you pull the trigger. It's wicked, right? And when I eventually build my new home office, I will get my Sparky mate to actually wire it in so I can hang it on the wall and have it lit up all the time. But it does need a repair because I used to have it on my shelf in my old man cave office thing, and I was getting very exuberant on the old Beat Saber. And in my blind VR world, I went clang, smashed the shelf, buggered my hand, nearly broke the Oculus controller, and I heard this massive crash. And when I picked up the needler, one of the needles had snapped off the device. So it can be glued. I've still got it. It's still safe. But yeah, that was a moment for me. Whoops.
That would be annoying.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to follow, John.
Sorry.
I wish we would have gone last. It's like I don't have anything cool like that. I was like, Nick did get me thinking about, those times where I was buying those N64 games, try to get Orcania time at launch, and how I got raked across the coals. I guess in hindsight, it was a pretty good deal, right? Considering those games if they're reselling like that, man.
Yeah.
I think my mom, though, when we weren't looking and we stopped using stuff as we were growing up, just kind of unloaded. I had all kinds of Star Wars stuff like the X-Wing and all kinds of stuff that would have been worth money these days, but
Ninja
they'd be
Turtles,
cluttered.
He-Man.
But you know what? The way I kind of deal with that is the reason why that stuff's worth so much is because most moms and dads were the same way. Otherwise that stuff wouldn't be worth that much if everybody still had the toys they had growing up. So, so that's unfortunate. The time I did something stupid like that though was had nothing to do with gaming. It was I used to collect sports cards back, in high school. And I remember I was able to trade somebody. Somehow I pulled off the deal of the century. I got Barry Sanders, his rarest rookie card, but it was in really bad shape, around the edges. And I hate even admitting this. For some reason, I thought I could make it look better by trimming the edges.
Oh no!
Then I found out that once you do that, it's worthless.
Oh
man!
Dude.
So I did that. I should have just kept it in bad condition. It still was worth a lot. I still have it. It's trimmed. I should have.
I wish I'd kept my Pokemon cards for one more year. I sold them just before they really, really exploded in value just in the last 6 to 12 months.
Don't get me started.
I had the first 4 sets, all complete, all in perfect. I still sold them for $2,500.
Wow.
But had I waited probably another year, I might have got double that.
See, that really bugs me. When we had that conversation when you sold them, I had so many Pokemon cards. When I used to make my little brother spend his pocket money on my Pokemon cards, and we had loads. I had like a big, almost Lego style barrel, and it was full. I have no idea about sets. I was a kid. I wasn't paying attention to but I know I had a lot of shinies. And I went when I was around my mum and dad's after we had that conversation. I was like, hey, this tin, I used to have all these Pokemon cards. Where are they? And they're like, oh, I think I chucked them out ages ago. And I'm like,
yeah.
God damn
I
it, mother.
had full set. I had the full set of the Ninja Turtles cards. Mum eventually chucked them out. The Simpsons cards from the first. There was a set of Simpsons cards that were done based on the first episode or the first season or something.
Wow.
Had the full set of those. Mum eventually threw them out. He-Man, Ninja Turtles, Voltron,
Mums.
various Transformers. I had all of it, and it's all gone. I'm absolutely devastated.
Brutal.
What about you, Figments? Or are you too young?
No, I take care of my things. I don't break them.
No, not had any collectible mishaps or anything.
No.
Well, I said he's too young because anything he's collecting now, he already knows to keep it in good
I don't
nick.
collect things is the thing. I don't collect things. So
because once I hit my teens, that's when I started realizing, hey, I still have my original Game Gear from 1992 from my 12th birthday, and it's still got the box, and it's still got, and I was 12, and still thought to keep the box, and so I did realize at a point that, hey, I need to keep everything and keep it looking nice. I still have my original Dreamcast. I've still got that Pokemon Nintendo 64, the half yellow, half blue one. Still got the VHS tape in it.
Wow.
Of the original movie. My 64 collection, I'm looking forward to selling that because I reckon that's going to make so much money. That 64 collection is just going to be huge. But yeah.
Good question.
I like that question. That was good.
Yeah.
Two more. Quiet Gamer 90. Hello, gentlemen. This upcoming week will be the beginning of games galore on Xbox. I know it is not the only metric / indicator of success, but give your average score predictions on the following games: Death's Door, The Ascent, Flight Sim. There are also Omno and is it Crytales? Crytales. But I think the games above are considered to be the bigger releases for this month.
what's the first game? 'Cause
hang on.
I've only heard of the last two.
Death's Door.
Death's Door.
That's the Devolver Digital published one. Looks great.
Well, I've I happen to know. So I haven't played that, but I have watched. As you know, XboxEra. We obviously we're an organisation, so we know what our fellow colleagues are working on. So I'm hesitant to predict because I'm tainted somewhat by that
I haven't watched
conversation.
this video. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, so I'll let you guys predict, but I think all three games will score highly.
Yeah. Death's Door, I'm going to put at probably 85.
Yeah.
The Ascent, I'm going to put at 88. And Flight Sim Xbox version. So PC version's 90, yes?
Yeah,
Or 91 or...
It's up very high. It's in the 90s.
Yeah.
I just want to see. I need to see.
I need to know.
Give your predictions. Give your predictions. I need to see with Flight Sim.
Well, I think the Ascent will score 9s, majoritively.
Oh wow.
I do. I think that game's going to tick a lot of boxes for folks. And I think Flight Simulator, I think it's going to get 8s and 7s on console.
Yeah, I was going to say 7. I was going to say 7. Yeah,
because it's a simulator, right? It's not.
It's a very pretty game. It's a very pretty game, but there's not a lot of reviewers out there who are equipped to really review simulators adequately.
Yeah.
It's at a 91, the PC version. So I'll put the Xbox version at like 81. I'll knock 10 off.
Omno, I was going to review this one, but I've been usurped. But yeah, I think it looks charming, but I like to go in blind, so I don't usually watch loads of stuff. I find out the way, so I couldn't really predict on that. Chris Tale's not really my cup of tea, but I do know that we're in the process of reviewing that one as well. So yeah, but yes, it is. The smorgasbord is coming. There's some good games coming now. This week in particular is looking great, and then August is looking great, and then. Well, the ride continues, so it's definitely going to be a fun
big hole
6
in
months.
September that people keep talking about.
There is a big hole. There is a big hole.
I really still hope that we get 4 codes for the Ascent.
Yeah,
not because as many copies as possible, because I really would love to do a 4-person review.
Yeah,
and the written review is, each of us gets a paragraph, and then the video review, each of us talks a bit. I reckon it would be really cool to do that. Have you told them that that's what we want to do?
Yes, we're trying to facilitate that, but
I reckon it'd be really cool.
We small, they big. In terms of
yeah, I know, but
us
still.
versus other publications and availability of digital codes. But yes,
yeah, but they're not going to do 4-person reviews like we are.
No, they're probably not. We'll try. We can, but try.
Okay, last question. And wow, we've been going for well over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, gents. With the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator just around the corner, where will your maiden flight take place when you first boot up the game on Series X? Or S or PC. For myself, I'll check out my hometown of Newcastle, fly up to Tamworth, where I spent some years when younger, and then who knows? The options are endless. P.S. Anyone tried Power Wash Simulator? Stay safe and happy gaming. If I were to boot up Flight Sim, I would try and find my house first.
That's what
which surely is
everybody
what
does.
everyone does.
Yeah.
Everyone tries to find their house first and crash into it.
Yeah. True story. I did.
Then I would fly to probably Vegas because I didn't get to go there for my 40th last year. And then I'll fly over Greece.
I actually, Flight Sim is an interesting one because I've actually been looking forward to it, but not for, myself personally. I want to, next time I go visit my parents who are, 5-6 hours away in a few weeks, I'm hoping to have that downloaded and fly my dad back to his home country in Pakistan, which he hasn't been back to in 40 years. I was like 5 when I was there, so, in case we were trying to do the math. So, but yeah, I want. My dad's not a gamer. The last time he gamed, it was Pac-Man. He was really, really, really great at it. He's not into video games, but I want to see the look on his face as we're just going over his home country, and I want to just see if, what he wants to go look at, because that's probably the closest, now that he's had heart surgery, it's probably going to be the closest he's going to be able to get to actually flying back. So I hope they've done a good job.
Yeah,
they've done a good job mapping out that country. If not, I mean, he won't know the difference, right? So we'll just say it definitely is. This is exactly where your home is.
That's really cool.
Exactly where everything is. Exactly.
Well, I imagine he would probably look at it and go like, "Oh, I recognise that street, but oh my god, look what's changed." And you get those kind of moments.
Is that how much detail it goes into, though?
It can
street
do.
level?
Yeah. It depends where, right? There are highlighted bits.
There are gaps. There are gaps in the mapping logic. Yeah.
Yeah, but predominantly, like it didn't have the exact color and design of my specific house, right? But it had a house in the right place, and the road was there, and it was all the right kind of area. But you go somewhere more prominent like London, and I was able to fly to my old office and see that building, and it was very detailed. It's really just it's a sightseeing app, at the same time as it's a simulator. Yes, you can learn to fly, but imagine turn all the assists on. It's like I want to go see what this place is and what the real scale of it is comparatively to this plane or whatever. And then you got the Top Gun stuff, which is kind of cool. Yeah, it's
my
assumption really unique.
Is that the plan will be to map the entire planet properly. Yes.
Yeah.
That is my assumption.
I think it'll get better over time.
Yeah, there are areas that are handcrafted, and then there are areas that rely on, all the different data that they're pulling from satellite imagery.
I didn't read enough into it. Did they partner with any of the mapping services or anything?
They used Bing and Azure, I should say. So Bing Maps.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think there are some modders that have plugged Google Maps in, and you get some better results in some bits and stuff like that.
Because I was about to say, if they used Google or TomTom or one of the others, you'd think they'd get much better results. But I just wonder if Google would try and bend them over a barrel for their data. They would, wouldn't they? Because with Google, they'd get everything.
Probably.
They'd get literally everyone's houses and all that sort of stuff. But my assumption is that Google would try and rort them on that deal if they were to agree to it
or
at
it
all.
might be an untenable amount of data, and they have to rely on certain amounts of procedural generation and automated AI mapping and things like that. But either way, it's there. It's on Game Pass. As someone who played the PC version a fair bit, you've got zero to lose to just add it to your download crew and fly to your house and crash into it.
And preloads up, isn't it?
It is, and it's under 100 gig, 97.2, I think I read.
It?
The Ascent
okay, that's what I was worried about.
Between 17 and 18, the Ascent, it's there waiting.
Oh, it's going to be a good couple of months. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this year. And I guess that was the last community question, and we can probably, considering we've been going for 2 hours and 31 minutes now, we can probably bring this wonderful journey we've all been on to a close. It's been a spicy evening with a few hot takes, a few harsh words. I've enjoyed it, despite the if you're watching this now and thought, oh, that was a couple of uncomfortable moments, I'm there with you. There was some uncomfortable moments, but we got through it together. We've all grown. We've all learned. We've learned things about each other that we didn't know before, and that's the beauty of discussing and disagreeing sometimes. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on for the first time on the Mainline podcast instead of that little Halo one that you guys do. What's it called again? Halo Follower.
Yeah.
Halo's cool. Oh, you had me at Halo. Oh, yeah.
Halo.
Yep. You had me at Halo. So we'll actually be doing another episode on Thursday, and it should be a live episode. So, come join us in the chat. We'll be talking about that system, the marking system, and we'll be talking about the Encyclopedia and anything else you guys have questions on. Hopefully by then we'll have some more news, but if not, we got plenty. There's always plenty to talk about with Halo. But yeah, thank you, everybody, panel.
You're part of the panel now, bro.
Thank you for having me on. It was awesome, and I appreciate that you guys didn't put it on Nick's easy mode. You guys kept it tough today.
It was tough.
Yeah, Nick, where's your God mode? Huh?
This is definitely not.
Back to that?
I am a
definitely
God.
was not. This is not a Nick. This is not a Nick.
Yeah. Well, it has been a pleasure, and I guess can I give you an opportunity, because I know you're working on something in the background right now, that you've been working on for a while. Do you want to tease it in any way, shape, or form, or do you want to keep your cards close to your chest?
What thing? We're talking about
The thing.
The
thing.
thing?
Yeah.
I don't know what I should be teasing on that, John. So
I think this conversation is enough of a tease.
Okay,
We'll leave it there.
Yeah, we got some exciting things coming up, and it's not just about it's going to be exciting. We do think there's going to be some extra value for the community, and I guess we'll just end it there. So it's going to be it's going to be a lot.
You bring a very grown up element to this podcast. You're keeping us, all of us unruly kids, in check.
I'm the old.
You are the oldest now.
It's weird not being the oldest.
There you go. Enjoy it. So look, we'll wrap things up. Thank you to everyone who's been watching us, who's supporting us on Patreon. If you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast and it's your first time visiting us, please do hit the subscribe button, ring the little bell so that you know when we're dropping fresh content. It is a weekly podcast, and as you may have heard just now, we also have You Had Me at Halo, which is pretty much whenever Halo news is, but it also, when Halo Infinite comes out, well, they're going to be gearing up and chatting quite a bit. And other than that, I guess we'll see you all next time.
Yep. See you,
Ciao
everybody.
for now.
See ya.